Over millennia, empires arose on the ends of the earth, their visions and ambitions far broader than the simple desire for power. They chose locations that allowed them to see beyond the horizon, plateaus where the wind never extinguished the fires of their temples, valleys where water became the basis of life, seashores where trade turned cities into centers of attraction. Each of these civilizations left behind spaces carved from stone and planned as if their creators understood more than we usually attribute to the ancient world. Their architecture was not a collection of random decisions, but part of a unified logic that we are only beginning to discern. Today, these places seem frozen in time. Mighty colonnades reach into the sky. The steps of ancient temples are still warm from the sun, and the ruined walls retain a silence that feels more like an unfinished conversation. The empires have vanished, but what they built still stands as if waiting for someone to learn to read their language again. We will journey through these stone chronicles and try to understand what connected such distant cultures and why their achievements outlived their own peoples. In southwestern Iran, where broad plains gently rise to the slopes of the Zagros Mountains, lies a place where the ancient design can still be felt almost physically. Persepolis is not hidden in the depths of the desert or concealed among impassable hills. It is open to space, and this has its own logic. Its creators wanted the city to be visible from afar, a reminder of the strength and resilience of a state that encompassed vast territories. The stone platform, raised above the valley, doesn't appear to be an intrusion into the landscape. On the contrary, it seems to have grown alongside it, forming a unified whole where architecture and nature reflect the ruler's vision of creating a place that would endure time. As you ascend the long steps leading to the upper terrace, you feel the space gradually open up. The height of the steps was deliberate. They forced you to move slowly, as if preparing you for a transition to a different rhythm. Along the passages, reliefs depicting embassies arriving from all corners of the empire remain. People dressed in the clothing of various nations bear gifts, fabrics, precious vessels, animals, and handicrafts. These scenes convey an impression not of coercion, but of respect and participation in a shared political world that existed thanks to the unifying force of Persian power. The reliefs become a visual chronicle, collected in a single place, and this chronicle remains vivid even after millennia. The upper platform opens onto a space filled with sweeping halls, portals, and columned courtyards. The partially preserved columns still rise above the ground, their proportions suggesting the building's grandeur. Light flowed freely through the open galleries, reflecting off the smooth stone. The architects sought more than just aesthetic appeal. They created a space where the interplay of light and shadow emphasized the significance of each space. The palaces of Darius and his successors were not ordinary residences. They were centers where delegations were received, ceremonies were held, and decisions were made that determined the fate of vast territories. The space served as an expression of power, hidden not in ostentation but in thoughtfulness. The layout of Persepolis was guided by a sense of order. Passages guided movement so that people followed a predetermined trajectory. The scale of the terraces and buildings evoked a sense of stability, and the architecture suggested that power here did not rest on chance. Sculptural motifs, ornaments, and animal images complemented the composition, emphasizing the diversity of peoples and traditions that formed part of the empire. This multi-layered combination of symbols, forms, and proportions reveals a desire to create a space where unity arises not through uniformity, but through the harmonious coexistence of diverse cultures. Today, Persepolis is not completely preserved, but its structure reveals the thoughtfulness of the ancient masters' plans. Enormous blocks, perfectly fitted together, testify to a high level of engineering. Traces of fastenings and finished surfaces demonstrate the meticulous planning of each element. Researchers continue to study the methods of moving and installing the stone structures, the specifics of the use of materials, and the overall construction system. Even the fragments of buildings allow us to imagine just how magnificent the complex must have been in its heyday. Standing among the columns and ruins of the walls, you sense that Persepolis has not become mere ruins. The space still retains the power imbued by its creators. The silence here doesn't feel empty. It recalls the ceremonies and meetings that took place beneath these vaults. The light falls on the stone just as it did thousands of years ago, and in this steady rhythm one senses a connection to a bygone era. The empire has vanished, but the place lives on as if ancient masters had created an architecture capable of preserving not only form, but also meaning. Persepolis remains one of the most expressive spaces of the ancient world, where history is not simply preserved but continues to resonate. In the Bekaa Valley, surrounded by the gentle slopes of the Lebanese mountains, lies a site that even today evokes astonishment in its scale. Baalbek seems part of the landscape, but one must approach to realize that before the traveler are not simply the ruins of an ancient complex, but a space where stone has been bent to the will of men with extraordinary skill. Gigantic platforms and temples rise from the earth with such confidence, as if time itself has passed. At first glance, it becomes clear that the architects sought to create not only a sanctuary, but also an image that would inspire reverence in all who entered the area. Baalbek occupied a key position at the crossroads of ancient routes connecting the Mediterranean and the interior of the Middle East. This explains why the site assumed such a significant role in the religious and political life of various eras. Cultures succeeded each other here, each people leaving its mark, but the overall structure of the complex developed gradually, evolving into one of the largest temple centers in the Roman world. As you ascend the stone steps to the temple grounds, you feel the space expand. The platforms are so large that they seem designed for creatures far larger than humans. Particularly striking are the enormous stone blocks that form the base of the terrace. Some are over 20 meters long and weigh hundreds of tons. These boulders are so precisely positioned that it's nearly impossible to insert a blade between them. Researchers still wonder how ancient builders managed to move and arrange such massive stones. One section of the complex, known as the trilithon, consists of 3 blocks, considered among the largest dressed stones ever moved by humans in the ancient world. The sight of these blocks is impressive beyond words. They don't simply lie in place, but rather serve as the foundation upon which the entire architectural composition is built. Grand temples towered above the platform. The most famous is the Temple of Jupiter, of which several tall columns remain. These columns rise so high above the ground that even today, standing next to them, one feels part of a space designed for an entirely different scale. Their proportions are carefully designed to convey an impression of stability and solemnity. Light falling on the smooth surfaces emphasizes the magnitude of the complex, and the shadows cast by the columns create a sense of depth which was an important part of the architectural design. Nearby stood the Temple of Bacchus, which is much better preserved. Its walls and interior spaces allow us to imagine the rituals and ceremonies performed here. The inner hall seems alive. Relief panels, frieze compositions, and columns form a holistic image, where every detail is integrated into the overall system. Soft light filters through the openings, creating an atmosphere of grandeur and tranquility. Even the ruined parts of the temple retain this rhythm, and the impression is formed not only by its size but also by the intricacy of its decoration. Baalbek was more than just a religious center. It served as a venue for important gatherings and meetings that could influence political processes in the region. Such a vast space was meant to emphasize the influence of those who ruled these lands. The architecture conveyed the idea of power not through aggression, but through precision and beauty that remain recognizable even after thousands of years. Stone here was more than just a building material. It was part of the language with which ancient masters spoke to future generations, leaving a message about their understanding of the world. Today, Baalbek continues to amaze. Despite the destruction wrought by time and natural elements, it retains the structure as originally conceived in ancient times. Walls, columns, and platforms reveal how builders achieved the stability of such large structures. Researchers continue to study stonework and handling techniques, and each new analysis reveals that ancient engineers possessed far greater expertise than previously believed. Baalbek remains a space where one can sense the connection between past and present. Here, history is not lost in the mists of time, but lingers in every stone block, in every line of a column, and in every shadow cast by the ruins at sunset. On the southern coast of Italy, near the calm waters of the Tyrrhenian Sea, lies a place where antiquity feels unusually close. Paestum isn't hidden in the hills or lost among dense forests. Situated on a flat plain, the temples built by the ancient Greeks stand out from afar, like three stone guardians overlooking the sea and land that once nourished the thriving city. This space appears simple in form, but the longer you spend here, the more you sense that Paestum was crafted with an understanding of light, scale, and silence that will endure any era. The city was founded in the 7th century BC and was originally called Poseidonia, after the god of the sea. The Greeks chose this location for a reason. Trade routes passed nearby, and the fertile lands allowed for the development of agriculture. But the most impressive thing about Paestum is not the story of its founding, but how the architects managed to create a complex that remains one of the finest examples of the Doric style. The city's main temples stand virtually untouched by time. Their massive columns, clean lines of the entablature, and precise proportions make the ensemble incredibly expressive, even after 2,500 years. The first thing a traveler sees is the Temple of Hera, known as the Basilica. Its columns appear heavy and grounded, but it is precisely this solidity that creates a sense of stability. The space around the temple is open, allowing its proportions to be perfectly defined. In the morning light, the stone takes on a soft hue, and the lines of the columns become especially clear. At sunset, the temple becomes a silhouette, standing out against the orange sky and seeming to be part of the landscape rather than a separate structure. The silence here is particularly profound, undisturbed by either modern sounds or the echoes of the big city. Not far from the basilica stands a second temple dedicated to Hera, but it's more recent and more slender. Its columns are thinner, the spaces between them are wider, and the temple itself appears lighter. This allows us to see how architectural traditions changed over time while maintaining common canons. Ancient masters were able to create not just buildings, but integral spaces, where each proportion supported the next. Thanks to this, even the ruined parts of the temples appear as elements of a living structure, not as random fragments of the past. The third temple, that of Apollo, sometimes called the Temple of Poseidon, is considered one of the most harmonious Doric structures. Its columns are remarkably well preserved, and the interior allows one to imagine the rituals that took place beneath these vaults. Light penetrates through the spaces between the columns, creating a sense of gentle movement in the space. At Paestum, light plays a special role. It highlights the relief of the stone, accentuating its texture, and evokes the idea that ancient architects took natural conditions into account when creating their buildings. Surrounding the temples are the remains of residential areas, streets, and public buildings. While not as well preserved as the religious buildings, they help us understand the structure of the ancient city. Wide streets, sections of walls, and house foundations allow us to see how people lived, worked, and moved through this space. Mosaics and frescoes found here reveal details of everyday life, and their themes complement the architectural image of Paestum. These fragments convey a sense of naturalness that keeps the city alive even after thousands of years. Today, Paestum retains its special place among ancient complexes. Its temples look almost identical to their ancient counterparts, thanks to the fact that they were never rebuilt or converted into new religious centers. This preservation makes the city a rare example of architecture that remains close to its original design. Here, time seems to slow down. One can stand for a long time among the columns and observe how the light moves across the stone, how shadows lengthen and fade, how the horizon slowly dissolves in the evening air. Paestum remains a reminder that architecture can preserve the moods, thoughts, and decisions of people who lived long before us. There are no grandiose rock plateaus or gigantic blocks here, as in Baalbek. Paestum operates differently, through calm, harmony, and the conviction that beauty can be simple and enduring. In this city, every column, every stone, and every line reflects a desire for order that has endured for centuries. And it is precisely because of this clarity that Paestum remains one of the most expressive testaments to the ancient world, one that continues to resonate today. In southern Egypt, near the border with Nubia, amidst dry stone hills, stands a place that has for centuries retained a sense of silence, unlike any other ancient location. Abu Simbel sits on the shores of the vast Lake Nasser, but these cliffs once overlooked the Nile, a route for travelers, traders, and soldiers. Here, deep in the desert landscape, Pharaoh Ramesses II ordered a temple carved into the rock to proclaim his power, achievements, and undeniable influence. But the architecture of this site speaks of more than just power. It conveys a sense of time, which the pharaohs sought to stop within the stone. The first impression of Abu Simbel begins even before one approaches the temple. 4 gigantic statues of Ramesses II, carved directly into the sheer cliff face, rise to such a height that even a modern observer finds it incredible that these figures are man-made. Their faces are calm, their gaze directed into the distance, and the massiveness of their shoulders and torsos creates the impression that they are guarding the entrance not to an ordinary temple, but to a space separated from the everyday world. Although one of the statues was damaged by an ancient earthquake, even its shattered fragments retain a sense of presence that is impossible to ignore. Beneath the colossal figures lies an entrance leading to a long corridor cut deep into the rock. The interior of the temple is designed as if it were conceived not only as a place of worship, but also as a path through which one passes from light into semi-darkness, and then into a space filled with silence and anticipation. Along the corridor are columns adorned with images of Ramses the Stern as Osiris. These columns appear as living guardians guiding one deeper into the temple. The light here is barely noticeable, but precisely because of this the shadows fall particularly softly, emphasizing the form of the reliefs and lines. The temple's main chamber is the sanctuary, located at the very end of a long axis stretching nearly 60 meters. Inside stand 4 statues: Ramesses the Stern, Amun-Ra, Ra-Horakhti, and Ptah. They are smaller in size than the giants outside, but the atmosphere of the room creates a sense of austere tranquility. Here lies one of Abu Simbel's most unusual features. Twice a year, on February 22nd and October 22nd, the rising sun penetrates the temple and illuminates 3 of the 4 statues, leaving Ptah, a deity associated with the underworld, in shadow. The fact that the ancient masters were able to precisely construct the temple so that the sun's rays would reach the correct point on these dates arouses the admiration of even modern engineers. The history of Abu Simbel extends beyond the New Kingdom. In the 20th century, the temple was threatened with destruction when the construction of the Aswan High Dam created Lake Nasser. The floodwaters would have completely submerged the valley, and Abu Simbel would have been forever buried beneath the surface. To preserve the temple, an international expedition embarked on an unprecedented project. They cut the temple into enormous blocks and moved it to the higher ground where it stands today. The work lasted 4 years, and the result preserved the ancient complex almost in its original form. This relocation was one of the most complex engineering projects of the 20th century, and demonstrated the importance of the ancient world's heritage to humanity. Today, Abu Simbel continues to impress in ways difficult to describe. In the bright sun, the statues appear particularly austere, but at dawn and dusk, the stone takes on a soft, golden hue, and the figures seem to change expression. The silence here seems part of the architecture. The faint sounds of footsteps, the wind, the quiet murmur of tourists all dissolve into the space, dominated by a sense of grandeur that has come down from the depths of time. Abu Simbel is more than just a monument to the era of Ramses the Strict. It's a site that reveals how ancient civilizations understood time, power, and memory. The temple was built to impress, but it achieves this not only through its scale. It demonstrates how harmoniously ancient masters combined art and engineering. Stone, light, proportions all serve a single purpose: to preserve the connection between humanity and history. In the heart of the Syrian desert, where the day is filled with dry light and the night brings cold, lies a city that was once a crossroads of worlds. Palmyra rises from the sands not as a forgotten oasis, but as a testament to the fact that, even amidst a merciless landscape, a space capable of uniting different cultures, ideas, and peoples can emerge. Its origins are linked to the trade routes that cross the desert between the Mediterranean and the distant lands of the East. Caravans laden with goods stopped here, and the city gradually became a hub connecting the space from Rome to Persia. The landscape around Palmyra seems motionless, but it is precisely this stillness that makes the city so evocative. Looking at its colonnades, you sense that they are not simply built along ancient streets. They rise above the desert with such confidence, as if built to withstand time. The main colonnaded street stretches for a considerable distance, and its rhythm shapes the structure of the entire complex. Each column is part of a larger composition that guides the traveler through a space once filled with life. The wind passing between the stone trunks enhances the sense of an architecture created not only for beauty, but also for movement. The center of Palmyra was the Temple of Bel, one of the most magnificent structures of the ancient East. Its massive walls and vast courtyard demonstrate the significance of this place for the city's inhabitants. The temple combined elements of various traditions: Greek, Roman, and Eastern. The architects sought to create not just a sanctuary, but a space that reflected the city's multi-layered culture. The courtyard was once surrounded by galleries, and reliefs and friezes adorned the walls, making the temple not only a place of worship, but also a symbol of wealth and stability. The road leading from the temple to the city center passed through a monumental arch, which served as a unique transition between different zones. The arch was more than just an entrance. It formed the axis along which the main streets and buildings were distributed. Its proportions and design emphasize the architect's desire to give the city a structure based on order and symmetry. Even today, despite the destruction, this place retains its impression. Fragments of the arch continue to reflect the light, and the remaining elements demonstrate the meticulous attention to detail. One of Palmyra's main symbols was its theater. While not on the same scale as the largest Roman amphitheaters, its location created a unique atmosphere. The theater was constructed so that the open, deserted spaces remained part of the spectacle. Stone seats rise in straight lines, and the upper rows offer views of the city and the surrounding valley. The theater became a venue for meetings, performances, and social events. It brought residents together, and its architecture reflected the desire to create a space that would function not only as a place of entertainment, but also as a forum for interaction between different social classes. Palmyra is also famous for its tomb complexes. The tower tombs located near the city have preserved a distinctive form, characteristic only of this region. These tombs created the impression of stone towers rising from the desert, and within them were sculpted portraits of the families who lived in Palmyra. These images are extraordinarily expressive. The faces are sculpted with meticulous detail, seeming to peer through the centuries, preserving the memory of those who founded the city. The destruction Palmyra has endured in recent decades has greatly altered its appearance, but even what remains continues to tell its story. Lined columns, fragments of walls, parts of friezes and sculptures, all of this appears to be a framework holding together the memory of a time when the city was a center of desert life. Researchers continue to study Palmyra, and every element confirms how important the city was for cultural exchange between East and West. Traditions, customs, and ideas met here, and this multi-layered nature is still evident in the stone structures. Today, Palmyra is a place that evokes not only admiration, but also a sense of responsibility for preserving its heritage. Its ruins remind us how fragile even that which seems eternal can be. Yet even in its current state, Palmyra remains one of the most expressive testaments to the ancient world. Its silence echoes the voices, footsteps, and conversations of those who passed along its colonnaded streets. Palmyra lives on in the lines of light and shadow that move across its stones and in the stories it has left for future generations. On the coast of Libya, where the Mediterranean Sea meets a line of desert dunes, stands one of the most striking cities of the Roman era. Leptis Magna was long hidden under layers of sand, and it is precisely because of this that its ruins have retained their extraordinary integrity. Here, the silence doesn't feel empty. It is filled with the presence of stone arches, colonnades, and streets stretching into the distance, as if the city has merely fallen asleep and is waiting to come to life again. When you first approach Leptis Magna, you see only a fraction of the buildings, but after just a few steps, the space opens up so vastly that it becomes clear. This was a city created not only for habitation, but also for the display of power and wealth. The city gates greeted travelers with an arch known as the Arch of Septimius Severus, whose name is forever associated with the heyday of Leptis Magna. The arch stands at a crossroads, and its massive form sets the rhythm of the entire complex. The reliefs decorating the upper part are not fully preserved, but their lines are still visible, allowing one to imagine how they would have looked during the imperial era. The city's main street, a wide avenue paved with large slabs, began beneath this arch. Its smooth surface and strict geometry demonstrate the importance of order, reflected in its architecture, to Leptis Magna. One of the city's most striking structures was the market. Its circular squares, surrounded by columns, created a space where trade was not simply an exchange of goods, but a part of public life. Fish, grain, fabrics, and handicrafts were sold here. Some of the stalls and niches are so well preserved that traces of the fastenings and the smooth surfaces of the stone tables can be seen. The market was meticulously organized, demonstrating the thoughtful approach to urban functions in Leptis Magna. Continuing along the main street, you can see the theater built into the hillside. Its rows rise in smooth arcs, and the upper tiers offer views of the sea. The theater was used for both performances and public gatherings. Its architecture combines Roman planning with local features. It is this combination that makes Leptis Magna unique. The stone stairs leading to the top have remained almost intact, and one can imagine residents climbing them on clear summer evenings to see a play or hear a performance. However, the true heart of the city was the port. Leptis Magna emerged as a trading center, and the harbor provided connections with Carthage, Egypt, Rome, and other parts of the empire. The remains of breakwaters and quays demonstrate the power of this part of the city. Warehouses, baths, and workshops were located near the port. It was a thriving place, and it was here that Leptis Magna became one of the most important economic centers of the Mediterranean. Not far from the port is the Forum, a large open space surrounded by colonnades. The Forum served as a place for meetings, discussions, and official ceremonies. Its flat surface and clear lines create a sense of balance. While silence reigns here today, it's easy to imagine it filled with voices, footsteps, the clink of metal vessels, and the hum of public life. Statues of emperors and local rulers stood in the center, many of which remain in fragments. One of the most impressive structures in Leptis Magna were the baths. They served not only as a place of relaxation, but also as a symbol of the city's prosperity. The remains of pools, marble slabs, and fragments of mosaics demonstrate the high level of comfort available to residents. The interiors, designed with a complex heating system, retain traces of furnaces and canals. These baths demonstrate the high level of engineering that was characteristic of the Roman world and reached a particularly advanced level here. As you stroll through Leptis Magna, you'll notice features that distinguish it from other Roman cities. This is the combination of a strict Roman layout and softer Eastern motifs. Colonnades with Corinthian capitals stand side by side with arches decorated with details reminiscent of North African architecture. This diversity conveys the spirit of a city that developed at the crossroads of cultures and incorporated elements of various traditions. Today, Leptis Magna is considered one of the best preserved Roman cities. Its scale and condition make it unique. Here, the ruins don't appear as fragments of a lost world. They seem part of a living organism, in which every street and every building continues to fulfill its role, telling the story of how people lived, worked, and celebrated here. Leptis Magna continues to impress with its tranquility, space, and architecture, which have survived the centuries and preserved the atmosphere of a city where the ancient world reached one of its apogees. In the heart of Algeria, among gentle mountains and passes where the landscape creates natural terraces, lies one of North Africa's most unusual Roman cities, Jamila. Its ruins stretch along the hillsides, and it is this uneven topography that gives the city its distinctive character. Here, space doesn't appear pre-planned or perfectly calculated. On the contrary, the architecture seems to adapt to the natural curves, maintaining a connection with the terrain. This creates a sense of a natural extension of the landscape, as if the city grew with the land rather than was built on top of it. The path to Jamila passes through wide valleys where the wind freely moves the dry grass. Even from afar, fragments of walls, arches, and colonnades rising above stone ledges are visible. As you get closer, the sense of time becomes more taut. The stone seems warm, and the light falls so softly that the shadows emphasize the lines of the buildings. Jamila is not a monumental city striving for grandeur. It creates the image of an urban space that has retained a living structure despite destruction. One of the central features of Jamila is the Forum. Situated on a natural platform, its structure emphasizes the city's connection to the landscape. The square is surrounded by fragments of walls and column bases. Despite much destruction, the Forum's form remains legible. A rectangular outline, carefully laid slabs, and the sites where statues once stood. The Forum overlooks the hills, and this perspective creates the sense that the city was part of a larger natural space. Nearby stands the Basilica, a long building designed for court hearings and assemblies. The remains of its colonnade rise against the mountain sky, their vertical lines contrasting with the soft forms of the hills. Inside, the space feels almost intimate. Light filters through the ruined openings, falling on the stone slabs, casting a warm glow. This space retains a solemnity without being overwhelming. It evokes a sense of calm order, characteristic of Roman cities. Nearby are the remains of the Temple of Septimius Severus. This temple was once one of the city's main religious buildings. Its facade stood on a high terrace, offering views of the surrounding streets and the valley. Massive foundations, steps, and fragments of columns have survived to this day. The temple's architecture emphasized not only its religious significance but also a desire for harmonious proportions. Even the ruined elements create a sense of austerity and symmetry. One of the most striking features of Jamila is its grid of blocks. The streets stretch in uneven lines, rising and then descending. They are paved with stone, and it's easy to imagine the movement of people, artisans, and merchants along them. In some areas, water supply canals and drainage ditches have been preserved, demonstrating the well-thought-out nature of the urban infrastructure. Despite the city's compact size, the entire space is organized to ensure smooth and convenient circulation. Residential areas are located near community centers. The houses have foundations, courtyards, and rooms separated by neat partitions. Some buildings retain traces of hypocausts, underfloor heating systems. Even in the ruins, it's clear that the residents of Jamila valued practicality and comfort. The spaces of the houses are designed to be protected from the wind while still receiving ample light. The theater is particularly striking. Small, but striking. Built into the hillside, its steps rise in smooth arcs. The upper rows offer views of the valley, and the stage is oriented to be illuminated by soft daylight. The theater creates the feeling of a space where culture was an important part of life. Despite its modest size, it conveys the atmosphere of Roman tradition, where public performances held great significance for society. Nearby is a marketplace, a space where trade played a central role. The remains of shops, warehouses, and marketplaces have preserved a structure that allows us to imagine the bustle of this place. Agricultural produce, handicrafts, and ceramics were sold here. It was a hub of exchange, a meeting place for city residents and people from surrounding settlements. Another significant element of Jamila is the Arch of Caracalla. It stands at the edge of the city, creating a symbolic entrance. The arch is adorned with powerful projections and decorative elements, despite the fact that part of it has been lost. It has a solemn appearance, and its presence underscores the city's status. Passing under the arch, you feel the space open up before you, uniting architecture and nature. Jamila is surrounded by hills, creating the feeling of a natural amphitheater. The place feels protected, yet remains open to the sky and light. The wind flows freely between the ruins, creating a gentle sound that becomes part of the atmosphere. Standing on one of the terraces, you can sense the rhythm of the space. Calm, even, and steady. Today, Jamila remains one of the most striking archaeological sites in North Africa. It doesn't impress with its scale like Leptis Magna, nor does it strive for harmonious austerity like Tingad. Its strength lies in the connection between architecture and topography, in the way the city adapted to the hills, and in the way the lines of the buildings followed the contours of the land. Jamila reminds us that an ancient city can be vibrant not through monumentality, but through a naturalness and precision that endures the centuries. On the western coast of Asia Minor, near the curved line of the Aegean Sea, lies one of the most distinctive cities of the ancient world. Ephesus lies in a gentle depression between hills, making its streets and colonnades seem like a natural extension of the landscape. There are virtually no sharp elevation changes. The space unfolds smoothly, just like the history of this place. Ephesus was a major city long before it became part of the Roman world. It developed under the influence of Greek culture, then entered the orbit of Hellenism, and later became part of the vast empire that shaped it into the form we see today. When approaching Ephesus from the modern road, the ruins seem to stand apart. But take a few dozen steps, and the space begins to come alive. The first significant structure is the Marble Way. Its wide slabs reflect the light as if they had been recently polished. The road descends, curving slightly, and from here the main axis of the city opens up. The rhythm of the columns, the surviving fragments of walls, the statues, and the marble fragments create a sense of movement, as if the city had not been destroyed but simply frozen for a moment. One of the most impressive structures in Ephesus is the Library of Celsus. Situated in the lower part of the city, its facade retains a grandeur that is difficult to match in centuries past. Tall columns, carefully crafted niches, and graceful statues positioned between them create the image of a space created not only for the storage of knowledge, but also to emphasize the city's cultural status. The Library of Celsus was more than just a building. It was a symbol of Ephesus's connection to the world of learning and philosophy. Looking at its facade, one senses that the architects strove to preserve in stone the harmonious order characteristic of the Hellenistic tradition. Next to the library stands the Gate of Mazaeus and Mithridates, a striking entrance to the city's agora. This marketplace was the center of trade and public life. Its square was surrounded by arches, columns, and rows of stalls. Much has collapsed, but the layout is still clear. The wind blowing through this space enhances the sense of ancient rhythm. It's easy to imagine the sounds of voices here, the merchants offering their wares, and the conversations between residents and travelers arriving in Ephesus by sea or land. As you ascend Curate's Street, you can feel the seamless transition from one part of the city to another. The street is named after the Curates, a priestly group that played an important role in rituals and festivals. Fountains, statues, temples, and houses are located here, among which the home of a wealthy family, decorated with frescoes and mosaics, stands out. Despite the destruction, Some of the images are so well preserved that you can discern details of clothing, household items, and plant ornaments. This reminds you that Ephesus was not only a social center, but also a city where a vibrant private culture flourished. The theater, one of the largest structures of its kind in the ancient world, stands in the upper part of the city. Designed to accommodate approximately 25,000 spectators, its tiers rise up the hillside, creating the impression of a gigantic stone basin. The upper tiers offer a view of the ancient harbor, now filled in. When Ephesus flourished, the sea was much closer, and ships could dock almost at the foot of the theater. Such was the city's close connection to trade and travel. The theater was used not only for performances. In the Roman era, it hosted meetings, festivals, and major city events. On the opposite side of the complex are the ruins of the Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Although little remains, its historical significance remains enormous. The temple stood on a plain, and its size impressed travelers long before the Roman era. Its architectural style combined elements of the Ionic order, creating a space where religious traditions intertwined with the wealth and culture of the region. Even the few remaining column fragments serve as a reminder of the structure's magnitude. Ephesus was not only a religious, cultural, and economic center, but also a city with a robust infrastructure. Water channels, rainwater collection systems, thermal baths, public toilets, and numerous other elements of urban engineering demonstrate the meticulous planning of its construction by the city's architects. Traces of cisterns and canals remain, demonstrating how water was distributed among the various neighborhoods. Thanks to this, residents enjoyed amenities that are admirable even in today's world. Today, Ephesus remains one of the most visited archaeological sites in Turkey. But despite the influx of travelers, the city retains an atmosphere of silence. It emerges when one stands alone among the columns or gazes at the road stretching into the distance. The silence emphasizes the harmony the creators intended to imbue this space with. Even the ruined elements retain their role. They help us see what the city looked like, how it lived, and how it perceived itself. History doesn't seem distant in Ephesus. It's felt in every echo of footsteps, in every ray of light falling on smooth marble. This city continues to speak of a time when architecture wasn't just construction, but a language through which peoples express their place in the world. Ephesus has survived the centuries, but its structure remains strikingly clear. And because of this, it continues to be one of the most expressive testaments to the ancient world's understanding of beauty, strength, and order. In the heart of Anatolia, among the hills and rocky plateaus of central Turkey, lie the ruins of Hattusa, the ancient capital of a powerful empire that once rivaled Egypt and Mitanni for influence across vast swathes of Western Asia. Here, at altitude, where the wind carries the dry scent of the steppe and sometimes seems the only sound, the past reveals itself. It lies openly beneath our feet, in stone walls and gates that have endured millennia. Hattusa doesn't look like a typical ancient city. It feels like a complex system, embedded in the natural landscape, creating the impression that its builders thought as big as the mountains themselves. As you climb the winding road to the main gate, you first see seemingly chaotic stone blocks. However, the closer you get, the clearer it becomes. Before you is a carefully constructed structure, where every stone occupies its place. The city was surrounded by a powerful system of walls running along the hilltops. These walls created a sense of strength and control over the space. They did not run in a straight line, but followed the contours of the terrain as if echoing the natural texture of the area. This design made Hattusa not only a fortress, but also part of its natural defenses. One of the city's most striking features was its gates. The Lion Gate, located on the southern side of the complex, still stands almost completely intact. 2 massive lion sculptures carved from monolithic stones seem to guard the entrance to the city. Their eyes, framed by clear lines, look forward, giving their gaze a lifelike quality. The lions symbolized not only strength but also protection, and the gate itself served as a reminder of the capital's status, a place where power was not just an idea, but part of the everyday fabric of the state. A little further on lies the so-called Sphinx Gate. It is decorated with relief images of mythological creatures with the body of a human and the head of a bird of prey. In Hattian culture, sphinxes served as guardians of spiritual order, and their presence emphasized the sacred significance of the upper part of the city. This area was more than just an administrative center. It housed temples, sanctuaries, and spaces where rituals linking the ruler's authority with the gods took place. Within the city, the remains of the Great Temple, one of the key structures of Hattusa, remain. It was dedicated to the god of thunder and the goddess of the sun, the two supreme deities of the Hattian pantheon. The temple occupied a significant area, and its courtyard was carefully paved with stone slabs. Priests performed ceremonies here which influenced the most important decisions of the rulers. The temple's architecture did not display excessive opulence, but its austere forms and clear lines conveyed a sense of stability and respect for tradition. Just north of the city center lies Yerkoi, a famous stone gallery carved into the rock face. The walls of this passage are decorated with reliefs of gods, procession scenes, and symbols of power. Although the reliefs are partially damaged, their composition remains legible. The figures are arranged in sequential rows, suggesting that the stone gallery served as a kind of corridor between the human and divine worlds. Researchers believe that rituals associated with the renewal of power took place here. Hattusa is also striking in its layout. Unlike Greek and Roman cities where structure is governed by a strict grid, here everything is arranged in harmony with nature. Houses, administrative buildings, temples, and open spaces are arranged on different levels, creating a sense of the city gradually unfolding. Each part of Hattusa appears independent, yet at the same time integrated into the overall system. It is this multi-level nature that gives the place a sense of depth, as if the city was conceived as a model for world order, not simply a residential center. For all its might, Hattusa did not last forever. Following internal conflicts and external pressure, the empire gradually weakened. The city was abandoned, its walls eroded by the wind, and its wooden structures disappeared. However, the stone preserved the city's form so well that today it is easy to imagine processions moving through its streets, decisions being discussed in its squares, and ritual songs resounding in its temples. Today, Hattusa remains one of the most striking archaeological sites in the region. Standing among its walls, you can feel a steady, dry breeze that seems to carry the memory of those who lived here. The city's space doesn't oppress. It opens up slowly, allowing you to listen to the silence that preserves traces of a bygone power. Hattusa continues to tell the story of an empire that vanished, but left behind a stone image of a world where order and power were not just political ideas but parts of the landscape itself. In western Asia Minor, amid gentle hills and fertile valleys, lie the ruins of a city that was once the heart of the great Lydian kingdom. Sardis lies at the foot of a mountain range, where the reddish soil distinguishes it from the surrounding countryside. It is a place where nature and architecture come into rare harmony. The landscape seems designed to highlight the features of the ancient city. As you walk along the road leading to the central part of the excavations, it becomes clear why the capital of a kingdom renowned for its wealth, crafts, and trade arose here. Sardis was more than just an administrative center. It was a city where important traditions and innovations were born, transforming the economic history of the region. It was here that the rulers of Lydia began minting the world's first coins from a gold-silver alloy called electrum. This made Sardis a crucial hub on the trade routes connecting the eastern regions with the Greek world. But even such significant achievements don't explain the impressiveness of its ruins. The city's true strength lies in its time-tested structure. One of the key structures of Sardis was the monumental Baths Gymnasium. These two spaces, the baths and the physical education school, were combined into a single grand architectural composition. The facade, decorated with columns and arches, rises so harmoniously that even the destroyed elements retain a coherent structure. Standing before this building, One senses the scale characteristic of cities in the Hellenistic and Roman periods. The interior of the baths had a complex system of heating, water supply, and ventilation. Some marble slabs remain in place and their smooth surface still reflects the light. The gymnasium was located immediately behind the baths. It was a center of learning, where young city residents engaged in physical training and studied various disciplines. The gymnasium consisted of several courtyards surrounded by colonnades. The stone steps leading to one of the halls are so well preserved that it seems as if they were trodden only a few generations ago. The combination of the warmth of the stone, the open sky, and the strict lines of the columns creates a sense of order, which was an important part of the city's life. Near this complex stands one of the city's most significant buildings, the Temple of Artemis. Although only a few columns and wall fragments remain, their size conveys the grandeur of the structure. The temple's pillars were built in the Ionic style, and even their remains demonstrate the high skill of the ancient builders. According to legend, the cult of Artemis held particular significance in Sardis, and the temple served not only as a religious center, but also as a site for public ceremonies. The remains of staircases and platforms allow us to imagine the processions that took place here during festivals. The city's main street runs along the remains of the shopping arcade. The flagstones, which can be walked on today, lie almost exactly as they did in ancient times. The stalls were lined up, and some of their niches have retained their shape. Merchants offered fabrics, jewelry, metal, and ceramics here. A gentle breeze, blowing between the columns today, seems to carry distant echoes of the former bustle. The street leads to the ruler's residence, the citadel, located on a high hill. Little remains today, but the view from the summit conveys the scale of the city, revealing the valley that nourished it. Sardis was a city of contrasts. On the one hand, it was a center of wealth, where new economic models were born. On the other, it was a city built amidst a harsh landscape, where nature could dictate its own rules. Lydian engineers knew how to control water, directing it through specially created channels. The remains of these systems provide insight into the sophistication of their engineering. Even today, with many elements destroyed, one can still see how water entered the city and was distributed among houses, baths, and workshops. One of the unique sites in Sardis is the complex known as the synagogue, one of the largest and most richly decorated structures of its kind found in the ancient world. Floor mosaics, the remains of marble tables, and inscriptions testify to the strong and influential community that existed here during Roman times. Within this space, the silence seems particularly intense, as if the walls retained the echo of the many voices that once filled the hall. Today, Sardis remains an archaeological site that allows us to see how different eras, Lydian, Persian, Hellenistic, and Roman, were intertwined. Each layer left its mark, but they all come together to form a coherent picture. Stone blocks, columns, walls, all create the feeling that the city has not disappeared, but merely entered a long slumber. The light falls softly on the ruins, highlighting the architectural lines, and in these moments, it seems as if the past is still present. Sardis continues to convey the idea of resilience and multi-layeredness. The city, once a center of trade, culture, and power, today lives on through its ruins. They reflect not only architectural design but also the people's desire to create a space that will endure for generations. Sardis exudes a sense of harmony between man and landscape, and it is this harmony that makes the city one of the most evocative monuments of the ancient world. In southwestern Turkey, near the Mediterranean coast, lies the ancient city of Perj, a place where architecture, water, and landscape form a remarkably seamless ensemble. The valley in which the city is located is surrounded by low hills, and the Cataractes River flows nearby. Thanks to this river, Perj was once the center of a wealthy and densely populated region. Today, its ruins spread out over a vast area, and the space immediately underscores the city's design with an understanding of scale, movement, and order, which was intended to be maintained even through times of change. When you enter Perj through the ancient gates, the city initially seems to unfold slowly. as if testing your readiness to absorb its rhythm. The first thing you notice is the monumental Roman theater, located slightly off the main city axis. Built at the foot of a hill, its rows of seats rise in smooth arcs. From the top steps, a view opens onto the plain where the ancient city once bustled. The theater was designed to accommodate a significant number of spectators, and its architecture underscores the confidence with which the Romans approached the creation of public spaces. Even the ruined sections of the stage retain the striking overall silhouette. Next to the theater stands the stadium, one of the largest and best preserved in the region. It has an elongated shape, typical of ancient Greek tradition, and its stone seats extend along an oval perimeter. Standing inside, you get a sense of the scale of this structure. Each section of the stadium is built with the terrain in mind, and its dimensions allow you to imagine the kinds of spectacles that would have taken place here. The stadium was more than just a venue for competitions. It served as a meeting place, a festival, and even a place for trade, becoming the center of city life. After the stadium, the path leads to the city gates. They are shaped like a round tower and have a structure typical of the Hellenistic period. This area has always been one of the symbols of Perge, as it marks the beginning of the city's main axis, a long, colonnaded street that stretches for a considerable distance. Columns line both sides of the road, and even those that have been destroyed remain part of the overall street pattern. The rhythm of the columns creates a sense of movement, which was an important part of the urban space. A distinctive feature of Perge is its water system integrated into its architecture. A long canal, once filled with murmuring water, runs down the center of the main street. The canal is divided by small bridges and decorative elements. This water feature served not only as a decorative feature but also as a means of cooling the city on hot summer days. The combination of stone, water, and light creates the impression that the city was designed with an awareness of how natural elements can be incorporated into architectural composition. On both sides of the street were shops, houses, and workshops. Some buildings retain the remains of mosaic floors and frescoes. The ornamentation is simple yet expressive. In one section, a geometric pattern can be seen, in another, a fragment of a scene with animals. Such details remind us that Perge was not only an administrative and commercial center, but also a city of artisans, artists, and people who created objects that accompanied the daily lives of its residents. Moving to the northern part of the city, you can see the remains of a nymphaeum, a monumental fountain that was once one of Perge's key architectural elements. The nymphaeum stood at the foot of a hill and served as a water source for the entire central part of the city. Its facade was decorated with sculptures, columns, and niches, and the water flowed down specially crafted stone channels. Today, the nymphaeum is partially preserved, but its structure is still visible, making it easy to imagine the water cascading down, creating a cool atmosphere even on the hottest days. Near the nymphaeum are the thermal baths, another important element of urban life. In Perge, the thermal baths were combined with the gymnasium, where young residents studied and played sports. The thermal baths had a complex heating system, hot rooms, cold pools, and relaxation rooms. Some mosaics and columns have survived, reflecting the aesthetic appeal of these spaces. They reveal a desire to create a place where body and spirit could find balance. One of the most interesting sights in Perge remains the Acropolis. Situated on a hill that dominates the urban landscape, the ascent leads to a space containing the remains of early Hellenistic and even older buildings. From here, a panoramic view of the entire city opens up, and it is from here that Perge's connection with the surrounding nature is most clearly felt. The city was created not in opposition to the landscape, but as an extension of it. This is evident in every element of its planning and architecture. Today, Perge remains one of the finest examples of an ancient city in the region. Its ruins do not appear chaotic. Instead, the city unfolds sequentially as if guiding the visitor through the different layers of its history. Light falls on the stone surfaces at different angles, highlighting the shape of the columns, the relief of the slabs, and the structure of the streets. Despite the destruction, Purge retains its atmosphere, calm, spacious, and rich with the rhythms of the past. This city is more than just an archaeological site. It reminds us of how ancient masters combined functionality and beauty, how they understood the interaction between architecture and nature. Purge demonstrates that ancient cities were living organisms, flexible, multi-layered, filled with light and movement. And it is precisely because of this that it remains one of the most striking testaments to the civilizations that built the world long before our time. On the coast of Asia Minor, where the Aegean Sea changes color from deep blue to soft turquoise, stands one of the most impressive religious buildings of the ancient world, the Temple of Apollo at Didyma. This site is not in the city center, not in a bustling square, nor on a high acropolis. It is located closer to the coast, among low hills and a warm sea breeze. This placement creates the feeling that the temple exists somewhat apart from the bustle of humanity, and this has a special logic. Didyma was originally a sanctuary, intended to be a place of transition from the everyday to the sacred. When approaching the temple, your first impression is formed not by the details, but by its scale. The builders created a space that not only emphasizes the god's majesty, but also demonstrates the architect's skill. Enormous columns, fragments of the entablature, staircases, and walls appear to be part of a single stone mass. Even the ruined sections retain their strict geometry, demonstrating the precision of the ancient craftsmen. The Temple of Apollo was one of the largest structures in the Ionic style, and its size is astonishing even today, when only a fraction of the original structure remains. Upon entering the complex, one senses that the space is arranged differently than in typical ancient temples. Didyma was not a classical temple, with its interior concealed from view. It was a complex system of passages, platforms, and terraces that led the visitor deeper into the sacred area. Ascending the wide staircase, one sees massive columns, more than 100 of them. Even the few that remain convey the image that must have evoked in the ancients: admiration bordering on awe. Each column rises so high that your neck involuntarily tilts back as you try to take it all in. The Ionic capitals are decorated with flowing scrolls, and the column drums are composed with such precision that the barely noticeable joints appear as parts of a single whole. In some places, traces of carved decoration can be seen, fragments of spirals, leaves, and lines that emphasize the column's grace. The light falls on the stone in such a way that the surface appears alive. In the morning, it is cool and gray, and by midday, it turns to a warm gold. But the true charm of Didyma becomes apparent after passing the colonnades. The space inside the temple was unusually arranged. In the center was a vast open courtyard surrounded by high walls. This place evoked a sense of isolation. An oracle, highly revered, was housed here. People came from far and wide to hear the oracles, which they believed reflected the will of Apollo. The courtyard's high walls created a silence unlike any other. Even the wind sounded different here, as if passing through layers of stone from the past. One of the most impressive elements of the interior space are the two enormous corridors leading from the upper terrace to the main courtyard. These passages resemble canyons carved by human hands. High walls rise overhead, leaving a narrow strip of sky between them. The corridors create a gradual transition. First, the light softens, then the space cools, and the silence deepens. Ancient architects used this interplay of light and shadow to prepare visitors for their encounter with the sacred center. The inner courtyard, accessed by corridors, is the temple's most unexpected element. Open to the sky and surrounded by walls several dozen meters high, this courtyard once housed a small sanctuary and a sacred spring. The spring was considered a place through which the god could manifest his will. This is why water became an important part of the rituals associated with the oracle. Today, the spring has dried up, but stone foundations and traces of channels indicate its original location. Standing in the center of the courtyard, one senses that the space retains a sense of ancient power, even if its original function has been lost. Fragments of inscriptions left by visitors have also survived. Some express gratitude for answers received, others request patronage. These inscriptions create the impression that the temple walls hold the voices of those who came here for help. The sense of presence is heightened by the unique way sounds travel in this courtyard. Even if spoken quietly, the words seem more profound. Didyma was more than just a religious center. It served as an important part of the region's political and cultural life. Rulers and military leaders came here to receive signs and predictions. This place influenced decisions that could change the fate of cities and states. The architecture underscores this role. It creates a transition from the open world to a closed space, where people were meant to feel closer to the divine. Today, the Temple of Apollo in Didyma remains one of the most striking monuments of antiquity. It's easy to sense the atmosphere of time here, despite the destruction. The columns, walls, corridors, and open courtyard continue to live, preserving the structure imbued in them by the hands of architects. Didyma exudes an unusual harmony between light and shadow, between stone and air, between space and silence. This makes the temple more than just an archaeological site, but a place that still allows one to experience the breath of the ancient world. In northeastern Jordan, where the desert becomes flat and calm, and the horizon recedes into a soft haze, lies el-Jimal, an ancient city built almost entirely of black basalt. This distinctive feature is visible from afar. Dark walls, towers, arches, and houses stand out against the light sand. The city doesn't hide in the landscape, but neither does it strive to dominate. It seems to have grown directly from solidified lava, preserving the structure of a time when caravans passed through and artisans, traders, and warriors lived here. El-Jimal is one of the rare ancient cities that has preserved not only individual buildings but entire neighborhoods, streets, houses, and towers, allowing one to imagine it as a true urban organism. The route to el-Jimal passes through desert plains, where visibility stretches for miles. As you approach the ruins, light begins to reflect off the black walls, creating the feeling that the city breathes with the warmth of basalt. El-Jimal is not as bright and decorative as the Roman cities of the Mediterranean. Its architecture is austere, devoid of marble and intricate ornamentation, but it is precisely this austerity that gives it its distinctive character. Each building appears sturdy, as if designed to withstand time, wind, and desert conditions. One of the city's most noticeable elements is its system of tower houses, structures unique to the region. These buildings served both as homes and fortifications. Their black walls rise several levels, and their narrow openings suggest how people protected themselves from the heat and wind. These buildings create an unusual vertical rhythm to the streets. In some places, they stand in dense clusters, while in others, they form small alleys leading to courtyards. Although the roofs have long since disappeared, the structure of the rooms remains clear, and the shadows cast by the walls transform the space into a play of light and massive forms. The central part of the city includes several temples and public complexes. One of them is an ancient church built in the early Byzantine period. Its walls, constructed of dark stones, have retained their shape, and inside one can see the remains of columns, fragments of an apse, and wide aisles. Light enters through the ruined openings and falls on the basalt slabs, creating a soft, even illumination. This combination of stark stone and light makes the space almost meditative. Even in its ruined state, one senses that the church was an important part of city life. Nearby are the remains of a Roman residential complex. Its architectural structure is more regular: courtyards, rows of rooms, passages, and columns. The basalt stone lends the building a monumental appearance, but the proportions remain human, not overpowering. Here you can see the sites where light-colored columns once stood. They were brought from afar to create a contrast. Today, only the bases of the columns remain, but the contrast is more than noticeable. The light marks on the dark stone stand out even after centuries. One of the most atmospheric spaces in el-Jamal are the streets. They run in smooth lines, connecting residential areas, temples, and commercial buildings. Some streets are so well preserved that you can walk along them without losing a sense of scale. The wind flows freely between the walls, creating a sound that becomes part of the urban silence. It's a rare experience to be in an ancient city where the structure remains almost intact, where you can see not just individual buildings, but the entire urban fabric. The complex, which includes water cisterns, deserves special attention. The desert demanded precise management of water resources, and el-Jamal was capable of holding large volumes. The cisterns were carefully constructed, with sloping walls and paved floors. These structures testify to the city's sophisticated engineering. They sustained its residents even during the driest seasons, making the city reliable and resilient. In the southern part of the complex are the remains of a fortress wall. Its towers and passages emphasize the city's strategic importance. El-Jamal stood on an important caravan route, and its fortifications were designed to protect against raids. Even today, standing beneath the walls, one can sense that the city was perceived not simply as a place of residence, but also as a checkpoint and security post in the desert. Another expressive element is the so-called House of Artistic Reliefs. Its facade slabs retain carved images of animals and symbolic forms. These reliefs are made of the same basalt, and their lines stand out especially clearly against the black background. They demonstrate that even in harsh conditions, the architects strove for aesthetics and expressiveness. Although el-Jamal is often called the Black City of the Desert, its atmosphere is surprisingly soft. The light on the basalt doesn't appear gloomy. On the contrary, the dark stone brightens the desert colors, beige, gold, pinkish, and makes them appear more vibrant. Here, one senses the tranquility of a space that doesn't strive for grandeur, but remains whole and harmonious. Today, el-Jamal is one of the quietest archaeological sites in the region. Free from bustling crowds, the silence makes the city especially evocative. Standing among the tower houses, one can sense how the space retains the rhythm of the past. This city is not about marble beauty or monumentality. It is about resilience, adaptation, and the ability to create enduring architecture from what the earth has provided. This is precisely what makes el-Jamal unique and an indispensable addition to our selection of ancient sites. On the southern coast of Turkey, where pine forests descend to the turquoise sea, lies ancient Fasilis, a city that existed on the border of two worlds. On one side stands a mountain range, towering in powerful dark lines. On the other, 3 quiet bays sheltered from the wind, so harmoniously integrated into the landscape that it seems as if they were created specifically for the city. Fasilis was not a huge metropolis, but its location and structure made it one of the most distinctive port centers of the ancient Mediterranean. The ascent to Fasilis passes through a narrow strip of forest, where the scent of pine mingles with the moist sea air. As the path opens, the city appears immediately and completely. There are no massive walls concealing its internal structure. Fasilis unfolds at once. Bays, coastlines, fragments of walls, theater ruins, and a long main street running inland. The space seems seamless and quiet, as if this city has always lived to the rhythm of the sea, gradually absorbing the lines of the waves, the light, and the breath of the wind. The main structure of Fasilis is its 3 harbors. The northern bay is almost directly adjacent to the forest, creating a sense of seclusion. The southern bay is more open, with a soft, sandy shore along which it's easy to imagine the passage of ancient ships. The central harbor was the most important. Its stone quays jut out into the sea in smooth lines, preserving their shape. It was here that trade took place, ships arrived, and routes into the interior began. The entire harbor space creates the sense that the sea was not just a border, but the foundation of the city's life. The main street, a wide processional path paved with large stone slabs, runs from the central harbor into Fasilis. The foundations of shops, Workshops and small public buildings are visible on both sides of the street. Despite the destruction, the street's structure remains remarkably clear. It is straight and open, and fragments of walls, arches, and niches run along it. The light falls softly on the stone surfaces, highlighting the shape of each slab, making it seem as if the street still bears traces of the people who once filled it. Not far from the street is a theater. Built on a natural slope and facing the sea, it's small, but its proportions create a sense of harmony. The rows of seats rise in smooth arcs, and the stage is positioned so that it offers views not only of the city but also of the horizon. Standing on the top steps, one can imagine how performances were accompanied by the sound of the waves, how the actors' voices echoed in the wind. The theater creates the feeling that the city didn't separate everyday life from art. They existed together in the same rhythm. Behind the theater are the ruins of an acropolis. It rises onto a rocky terrace, and even in its ruined state, it's clear that the acropolis was protected by natural slopes. Fragments of walls, small rooms, and the remains of towers remain. Polished slabs indicate that this space served not only as a defensive, but also as an administrative site. The Acropolis overlooks all of Physalis, 3 bays, forests, narrow roads, and the sea. This panorama reveals the precision with which the site for the city was chosen. One of the most striking features is the remains of the aqueduct. It ran along forested slopes, bringing water to the city from mountain springs. The fragments of arches, standing among the pine trees, create a particularly powerful effect. The dark stone, the light filtering between the arches and the greenery, create a composition where engineering does not overwhelm nature, but rather blends with it. The aqueduct reminds us how well thought out the city's life support system was. In the center of Phasalis are the thermae, large public baths. Their walls, built of massive stones, have preserved the structure of the halls, passages, and pools. In some places, openings for the circulation of hot air are visible. Light streams in through the ruined openings, creating a sense of spaciousness. The thermae were an important part of city life. Here, people relaxed, socialized, and discussed the news. Without excessive luxury, they possessed a functionality that is still evident today. Physalis is surrounded by nature, and this is its main difference from many port cities. It is not overwhelmed by industrial elements, nor overwhelmed by massive architecture. The city seems to be dissolved between the sea and the pine trees. Stone, wood, water, all mingle in a single space. Even today, when the ruins stand quiet and empty, they retain the feeling of a city that existed not in opposition to nature, but alongside it. At sunset, Physalis becomes especially striking. The fading light reflects off the waters of the bays, and the shadows of the walls and columns become long. At such moments, the city seems almost alive. It is neither loud nor monumental, but its lines exude a calm confidence. Phasalis was not the center of an empire, but a point where paths intersected. And this is precisely what makes it unique. It has preserved the atmosphere of a place where life flowed gently, to the rhythm of the sea and light. Phasalis remains one of the most harmonious ancient cities in the region. Its ruins require no reconstruction or grandiose description. Everything here speaks for itself. Silence, light, water, and stone. This is a city that has endured the centuries not because of grandeur, but because of its precision, simplicity, and profound connection with nature. In the northeastern Peloponnese, amid gentle hills and wide valleys, lies Mycenae, a site that remains one of the most striking monuments of early Greek civilization. These ruins do not strive for the impressive scale of later cities, but their structure and layout create a sense of depth. Mycenae is located on a high hill, naturally protected by cliffs and narrow approaches. This makes the city seem to be suspended between earth and sky, its stone walls rising above the landscape in confident lines. The approach to Mycenae begins with a gentle slope. The road winds between hills, and as you approach, massive stone blocks appear, forming cyclopean walls. These walls are one of the city's most distinctive features. The enormous, uncut stones are laid so tightly that their joints appear almost natural. This construction doesn't create a sense of heaviness. On the contrary, it seems as if the walls grew out of the mountain itself, continuing its structure. Their power lies not in their decoration, but in their form and precision. The entrance to the city is through the famous Lion Gate. It is one of the most famous architectural compositions of Mycenae. 2 large slabs form the side walls, and a massive lintel rests on top. Above it is a triangular opening, inset with a relief slab depicting 2 lions flanking a column. This image has retained its expressiveness even after many centuries. It does not appear decorative, but rather symbolic, denoting power and stability. Passing through the gate, you feel as if you are entering a space where every line has been carefully considered. The main road leads to the Acropolis. Here lie the remains of a palace, a complex of rooms, passages, and courtyards. Although only foundations and low sections of the walls remain, the palace's layout is remarkably clear. The spaces are organized to allow for the circulation of air and light, as well as to create a sense of order. The central chamber, the Megaron, occupies a crucial position. Its rectangular shape, with a circular hearth at the center and the bases of columns visible on the sides, is a hallmark of the palace. Meetings and ceremonies were held here, and the very structure of the hall underscores its significance. Beyond the palace, a view of the valley opens up. This panorama creates the sense that Mycenae was not just a fortified outpost, but a hub connecting the sea and the hinterland. The lines of the hills and the light that falls on them at different times of day create a tranquil space. It is in these views that one senses how closely the city was connected to the surrounding landscape. One of the most famous features of Mycenae are the domed tombs located outside the Acropolis. The most impressive among them is the so-called Tomb of Atreus. It is a monumental structure constructed of massive stones laid in rows to form a high dome. The entrance is formed by a long passageway leading to a circular hall, and the walls inside appear austere and smooth. The dome creates the sensation of a single stone space that feels simultaneously enclosed and open. The interior is quiet, and the light filters softly, highlighting the forms. This architecture demonstrates the skill of ancient craftsmen in working with stone, creating stable and expressive structures. Other domed tombs, smaller in size, also retain their shape and proportions. They are built into the hillsides, creating a rhythm along the city's perimeter. Each has its own passage, facade, and inner chamber. Despite their differences in size, they are united into a common system that underscores Mycenae's status as an important center. Returning to the central part of the city, one can see a system of retaining walls, paved areas, and passages. Despite the simplicity of the materials, a desire for precision is evident. The stone is laid to withstand the pressure of the slopes and ensure the stability of the buildings. This engineering precision makes Mycenae particularly striking. The city does not appear randomly laid out. Every space, from the residential complexes to the defensive walls, creates a clear and consistent pattern. The houses surrounding the palace are partially preserved. In some, the outlines of rooms, passages, and courtyards are visible. These structures reveal how everyday life was organized. While not as monumental as the palace or tombs, they have a homely feel. The spaces are cramped but well thought out, and their arrangement reflects the overall layout of the city. The fortifications of Mycenae continue the line of the hill and stretch along its contours. They form the enclosed space of the Acropolis. The walls rise smoothly, their shape following the terrain. This natural integration of landscape and architecture is one of the reasons the city appears seamless. The stones used to construct the walls vary in size, but it is precisely this heterogeneity that makes them particularly striking. Today, Mycenae remains one of the most recognizable archaeological sites in Greece. There are no bright colors or luxurious decorations here. The city speaks through stone and form. It does not impose history, but allows it to be seen in lines, structure, and space. Mycenae retains the feel of a city that reflects the early stage of Greek architecture, clear, austere, and stable. The soft light, the quiet of the hills, the massive walls, and the views of the valley create a space in which antiquity feels not like the past, but part of the present. Mycenae remains a place where architecture and landscape form a single whole, preserving the memory of a city that has endured for centuries. In northern Tunisia, where gentle hills give way to wide plains, lies Bula Regia, one of the most unusual ancient cities in North Africa. Its uniqueness is immediately apparent. Some buildings have been preserved not only above ground, but also underground. These subterranean villas make Bula Regia unique among ancient cities. Light, stone, air, and depth are combined here into a unified architectural rhythm, demonstrating how residents adapted to the region's hot climate and how architecture could unite different levels of space. The approach to the archaeological site passes through a gently sloping plain. The horizon is calm, making the ruins visible from afar. The first thing the visitor sees is a wide plaza with smooth stone slabs. This served as the entrance to the urban area. The plaza's straight lines create a sense of order, and the soft light reflected from the stone emphasizes the geometry of the space. There are no massive walls to restrict the view. Instead, the space is open, making the city feel like part of the landscape. Immediately beyond the square begins a paved street. It runs in a straight line, flanked by the remains of houses, shops, and small public buildings. These structures retain their foundations and wall fragments, revealing their original proportions. Light passes evenly between them, creating soft shadows. The street leads to the city center, where the most significant buildings are located. One of the main features of Bula Regia is the Forum. It is a rectangular plaza surrounded by columns that once supported covered porticos. Today, the columns lie in fragments, but their bases retain their rhythm. The plaza's flagstones have been smoothed by time, but remain solid. Light falls evenly across the surface, highlighting the structure. The Forum was the center of urban life, and its proportions demonstrate that residents sought to create a space where movement and gathering occurred naturally. Next to the Forum stands a temple dedicated to a goddess revered by the locals. The temple stood on a terrace, its columns rising vertically above the city. Part of the foundation and several fragments of columns remain today. Despite the destruction, the temple's structure is easily discernible. The terrace is open to the wind, allowing light to pass freely across its surface. This openness lends a sense of expressiveness to the space. The temple was not massive, but its proportions emphasize tranquility and dignity. Descending a little lower, you can see the ruins of Roman baths. These baths retain their general layout: hot water halls, cool rooms, and pools. The walls of the baths are partially destroyed, but arches, niches, and fragments of the heating system are visible. Light filters through the destroyed sections of the ceiling, creating a soft illumination. The stone floors appear smooth, making it easy to imagine the movement of people. The thermal complexes of Bula Regia were an important part of social life, and their architecture reflects a desire for orderly space. Further on, the most unusual part of the city opens up: the underground houses. This is what makes Bula Regia unique. These houses were built with the first level above ground and the second underground. This design was designed to protect against the heat. The underground rooms remain cool, even in hot weather. Descending the stone steps, you enter a space with smooth walls and a ceiling supported by massive pillars. The light here is softer, filtering through small openings and creating an even illumination. Some underground villas have been particularly well preserved. They feature mosaics laid with colored stones. The mosaics depict geometric patterns, figures, and plants. Despite the passage of time, the lines of the designs have been preserved clearly. Light falling on the mosaics emphasizes their depth. Such floors made the houses not only functional, but also aesthetically pleasing. One of the most famous villas, the Villa of the Hunt, preserves a large room with a mosaic depicting a lion hunt. The mosaic is laid in neat tiles, creating a seamless image. Light filters across the mosaic's surface, highlighting its details. This room is located underground, and as a result, the mosaics have been better preserved than those found in many other sites in the ancient world. The space around the room is organized to allow free air circulation, and the stone walls create a sense of stability. The underground villas of Bulla Regia weren't completely enclosed. A ventilation system ensured air circulation, making the interiors comfortable. The passages between rooms are narrow, but the proportions are balanced. Light streaming through small windows creates soft shadows. Sounds are muted here, enhancing the sense of depth. Returning to the surface, residential areas can be seen. They are arranged to create a dense yet clear structure. Rectangular rooms, courtyards, and small corridors all reflect the residents' practical approach. Light flows evenly between the walls, creating a calming effect on the space. The residential areas reveal the everyday life that complemented the monumental structures. On the outskirts of the city are the ruins of a theater. Built into the slope, its steps rise in smooth arcs. The stage is positioned so that light falls upon it throughout the day. Despite the destruction, the theater's structure retains a sense of order. The upper rows offer views of the hills. This panorama creates a sense of connection between the architecture and the landscape. Bulla Regia is surrounded by hills, softening the space. Wind flows freely among the ruins. Light moves across the surfaces, changing the hues of the stone. In the morning, the stone appears cool, and in the evening, warm. It is this play of light that makes Bulla Regia special. Here, architecture is not separated from nature. It exists within it. Today, Bulla Regia remains one of the most expressive ancient cities in North Africa. It has preserved not only the structure of the buildings, but also a sense of depth. Underground villas, terraces, temples, baths, and plazas form a unified space. Light and air become part of the architecture. The city conveys clarity, tranquility, and stability that have endured for centuries. On the east coast of the island of Rhodes, where the rocky landmasses rise from the sea in gentle escarpments, stands the Acropolis of Lindos, one of the most striking architectural complexes in Greece. Its form is determined by nature. The rock, rising above the white buildings of the modern city, creates a natural platform upon which ancient masters built temples, porticos, and fortifications. Lindos is not hidden behind the hills. It is visible from afar, its silhouette combining the straight lines of the buildings with the jagged contours of the rock. The ascent to the Acropolis begins in the narrow streets of Lindos. The white houses, their low walls, the color of their windows, and the shady alleys create a sense of tranquility. As the path climbs, the space opens up. The view of the bay expands, and the light reflects off the white stucco so softly that it seems as if the city was designed to overlook the sea from every angle. Finally, the path reaches steps leading to the fortress wall. Here, the stone is rough, old, and naturally cracked. These walls belong to later periods, but they retain a form that directs movement toward the central spaces of the Acropolis. The first major structure is a monumental staircase from the Hellenistic period. It ascends in wide steps, creating a smooth transition between the lower level and the sacred area. Light falls evenly on the steps, and the shadows from the handrails and walls create a rhythm. The staircase requires no embellishment. Its strength lies in its structure, in the sequence of forms that lead upward. As you ascend, you feel the space become more open, and the sea gradually takes up more and more of the perspective. The upper platform features a large portico, built during the classical era. Its columns form a straight line, offering views of the bay. Despite its destruction, the portico retains its shape. The column bases are evenly spaced, and the warm light highlights the smoothness of the stone slabs. This space appears to have served not only as part of the architectural complex, but also as a viewing platform for the sea, ships, and the horizon. A sense of silence permeates the space, uniting architecture and landscape. Next to the portico are the remains of the sanctuary of Athena Lindia. The temple stood on a high terrace, and its columns rose above the rock, creating a vertical accent. Today, only fragments of the columns and wall bases remain, but even these convey the temple's structure. The space, surrounded by low walls, appears level and calm. The light falls softly on the slabs, highlighting their shape. The terrace is open to the wind, and the movement of air becomes a part of the space, creating the feeling that the architecture breathes in rhythm with the sea. Below is the famous bas-relief of a ship, carved directly into the rock. It represents the prow of a trireme, jutting out over the stone steps. This bas-relief is one of Lindos's most expressive works. Light highlights its carving, while shadows create depth. The image is not decorative, but functional, a reminder of the city's maritime character, its connection to travel and trade. The bas-relief is so naturally integrated into the rock's structure that it seems as if it has always been part of it. On the southern side of the Acropolis are the remains of early fortifications. Their walls follow the contours of the cliff face, and in places the stone appears minimally dressed. These fortifications do not appear heavy. They create a sense of protected space that does not overwhelm, but rather emphasizes the natural shape of the hill. The view from these walls opens onto the sea, and the horizon is calm and even. The shadows cast by the walls soften the landscape, and the light filtering between the stone blocks adds volume. As you ascend, you can see the remains of Roman buildings, small rooms, slab floors, and fragments of arches. These elements create a multi-layered space. They demonstrate that the Acropolis was used in different eras, each period leaving its own traces. Despite the differences in style, the entire space retains a cohesive character. Classical forms juxtapose Roman ones, and the architecture does not clash, but rather flows into a unified rhythm. A key element of Lindos is the view. The Acropolis is inextricably linked to the surrounding space. On one side is a deep bay, where the sea takes on darker tones as it approaches the horizon. On the other are the hills and white houses of modern Lindos. The panorama creates a calm and stable feeling. The lines of the roofed houses create a soft relief that transitions into the rock and then into the stone structures of the Acropolis. This sequence of forms creates a unified and balanced space. The remains of porticos line the western side of the Acropolis. Their columns stood along a wide path that served as a transition between different areas. Today, only the foundations remain, but even they create a rhythm. The stone slabs of the path are smooth, and the light reflects softly off them. The connection between architecture and movement is particularly perceptible here. This area seemed not ceremonial but everyday, intended for the people who lived and worked on the Acropolis. During the warmer months of the day, the structure of Lindos becomes especially expressive. Light rises up the steps, passes over the slabs, reflects off the columns, and disappears into the shadows of the rock. The wind flows freely between the walls, and the sound of its movement becomes part of the space. The Acropolis is open yet protected, high yet not oppressive. Its architecture does not overwhelm the form of the rock, but rather emphasizes it. This is precisely why Lindos appears unified. The city, the rock, and the sea form a single composition. Today, the Acropolis of Lindos remains one of the most atmospheric ancient spaces in Greece. It has preserved not only the structure of the buildings, but also the rhythm of the space, where architecture evolves alongside nature. Soft light, clean lines, sweeping views, and a calm sea create a sense of stability. Lindos is a place where ancient architecture has not disappeared, but continues to exist as part of the landscape, preserving a harmony that has endured through the centuries. In northern Jordan, amidst wide valleys and gentle slopes where hills stretch into the horizon in smooth waves, lies Jerash, one of the most complete ancient cities in the Middle East. Its structure has been so well preserved that the city feels less like a collection of ruined buildings than like a living space. Here, streets, squares, temples, and theaters are united into a single system, where forms and proportions are as clear as they were centuries ago. The path to the city winds through gentle hills, and as you approach, a monumental arch, built in honor of the emperor's visit, appears. This arch rises above the landscape with a confident form. It is unadorned with unnecessary elements, but its proportions convey a sense of solemnity. Passing beneath the arch, you sense the transition from open space to an urban structure. Beyond the arch, the street leads to one of Jarash's most distinctive features, the elliptical square. The square has a gentle oval shape, rare for Roman cities. It is paved with smooth slabs, and columns arranged in a gentle arc run along its perimeter. The colonnade emphasizes the rhythm of the space, and the light passing between the columns creates a play of shadows that changes throughout the day. The square feels open yet cohesive. One can imagine the movement of people, trade, and celebrations here. Its shape does not oppress, but rather embraces the space, uniting the main streets around itself. The Cardo, Jarash's main street, stretches upward from the square. It runs through the entire city and is paved with large stone slabs. These slabs bear the marks of ancient cartwheels. Columns on either side of the Cardo create a long corridor that directs the eye forward. Light falls softly on the columns, highlighting the details of the capitals. The Cardo connects the city's most important buildings, so walking along this street provides an opportunity to see the structure of Jerash as a whole. One of the city's key complexes is the Temple of Artemis. It stands on an elevated terrace and dominates the landscape. A wide staircase leads up to the temple. As you ascend, you feel the space become more spacious. The temple's columns rise in powerful vertical lines. Despite the destruction, they retain their strength. The sky is visible between the columns, and this connection with the open space creates a sense of harmony. The temple does not overwhelm with its structure, but rather emphasizes the importance of sacred space in urban life. The theater is located nearby, one of the most atmospheric parts of the complex. Built into the slope, its stone steps rise in smooth arcs, creating a rhythm that emphasizes the arena's shape. Light filters down the steps, changing the hues of the stone. The theater's acoustics are so well preserved that even a whisper can be heard in the upper rows. From these heights, views of the city and the hills open up. The theater creates a sense of connection between cultural life and the surrounding landscape. Not far from the theater is the Nymphaeum, a large city fountain. Despite the absence of water, its architecture remains expressive. Stone walls, niches, and decorative elements create a harmonious composition. The Nymphaeum occupied a central place in the city's infrastructure, providing coolness and serving as a meeting point. The fountain's facade, even in its ruined state, emphasizes the importance of water in the life of the city. Further along, the Cardo lies the Forum, a rectangular square surrounded by colonnades. The Forum was the center of public life. Meetings were held here, trade matters were discussed, and ceremonies were held. The Forum's space is open, with light falling evenly on the slabs, highlighting the strict lines of the columns. Despite the lack of upper ceilings, the Forum retains its significance thanks to its proportions and form. To the west of the Forum are the remains of a basilica, the building where court sessions were held. Fragments of walls and column bases reveal the structure of the interior space. Light filters through ruined openings, creating a soft glow. Despite its partial loss, the basilica retains a sense of order and clarity. Its form emphasizes the importance of the city's administrative life. The northern part of Jerash contains a complex of baths. Their halls and rooms reveal a sophisticated heating system. Holes for hot air remain in the floors. The walls appear austere, but the proportions of the halls convey a sense of spaciousness. The heating system was one of the most sophisticated parts of the city's infrastructure, and traces of this engineering can still be seen today. Jarash's residential quarters are located on both sides of the main streets. The foundations of the houses have preserved the structure of rooms, corridors, and courtyards. These spaces reflect everyday life. While they may not appear monumental, they convey the scale of the city and its dense construction. Stone door thresholds, remnants of columns, and paved slabs create a sense of stability. The city walls and gates of Jerash are also partially preserved. Their massive stone blocks are precisely aligned. The walls follow the contours of the terrain, enclosing the city in a smooth outline. In some places, towers remain. While not massive, they create a sense of defense. These fortifications underscore Jerash's strategic importance. Jerash is surrounded by green hills, which serve as a natural backdrop. Light filters down the slopes, creating soft hues. The city blends seamlessly into the landscape, as if architecture and nature had always existed together. This harmony is one of the reasons why Jerash remains so distinctive. Today, Jerash is perceived as one of the most complete ancient cities in the region. It has preserved not only its walls and temples, but also the rhythm of its space. Streets, squares, and colonnades create a structure that has endured for centuries. Jerash demonstrates how a city can maintain clarity and stability while remaining part of the landscape. On the coast of Lebanon, where the sea line stretches in a long, smooth arc and gentle waves gently lap against rocky cliffs, lies Byblos, one of the most ancient cities in the Mediterranean. Its structure, despite numerous eras, has remained remarkably intact. Layers of time can be discerned here, but each layer does not obscure the previous one. It merely complements it, creating a space in which ancient architecture, natural lines, and a modern rhythm are woven into a single, unbroken pattern. Byblos appears not as a collection of ruins, but as a city that has retained a sense of stability. The approach to the archaeological site follows the streets of the modern city. White house facades, narrow alleys, and the shadows of awnings gradually give way to stone structures rising from the ground in even lines. As the citadel unfolds, it becomes clear that Byblos was no haphazard settlement. It stands on a natural terrace facing the sea. This position allowed for control of the coast and the exploitation of sheltered bays. The horizon here appears particularly calm. The light falls softly on the stone, and it is in this light that the structure of the city emerges. The first thing that greets visitors is the Crusader fortress. Built of large stone blocks, it retains the shape of a square citadel. Although the fortress dates back to a later period, it underscores the city's strategic importance. Its massive walls, tower projections, and clean lines create a sense of stability. Inside, the space is organized around open courtyards and passages. Light filters through narrow windows, casting long shadows on the floor. This space is uncluttered and serves as a vantage point for views of the ancient cities beneath the citadel. Below the fortress lie the remains of a Phoenician temple. Stone blocks laid in precise lines form rectangular terraces. Their surfaces have been smoothed by time, but the structure remains clear. The light falls particularly evenly here, emphasizing the scale of the platform. The Phoenician sanctuary reveals an early stage of urban history. It is organized in a strict form, where every line emphasizes the connection between architecture and the land. The courtyards and platforms retain their boundaries, and it is easy to imagine ritual movement along them. Nearby are the remains of a Roman theater. It is built into the slope facing the sea. The theater is small, but its form appears solid. The stone seats rise in arches, and the stage is positioned so that the audience can see the sea beyond. Light filters through the steps, creating soft transitions between the stone rows. Despite the destruction, the theater's layout is easily readable. It does not appear monumental, but retains the atmosphere of a space where culture was part of urban life. The ruins of a Roman forum adjoin the northern side of the complex. The rectangular square was paved with large slabs, many of which remain in place today. Along the perimeter of the forum, the bases of columns that once supported porticos are visible. These columns were arranged in even lines, and their rhythm emphasized the importance of the square. Light falls on the bases of the columns, highlighting the precision of the stonework. The forum appears open, and the surrounding space retains the feeling of a space where meetings and trade took place. Nearby are the remains of a Byzantine basilica. Its walls are partially destroyed, but the structure of the three-aisle plan is clearly visible. The stone pillars that supported the arched spans are outlined by smooth lines. Light filters through the ruined walls, creating an even illumination. This space feels calm, suggesting a transitional era when architecture remained rational but was already shifting its proportions. On the southern side of the archaeological complex, the ruins of residential quarters have been preserved. The foundations of houses, courtyards, and fragments of staircases and passages give an impression of the dense urban development. These buildings were neither tall nor ornate. Their forms are simple: rectangular rooms, small thresholds, and smooth slab floors. It is precisely this simplicity that gives them their expressiveness. The light filtering between the walls creates a stillness rarely found in ancient cities. The ancient port of Byblos deserves special attention. It is located next to small cliffs that form a natural harbor. The sea approaches the stone walls gently. The shoreline is paved with flagstones, making it easy to imagine the movements of ships' crews and traders. The port does not appear to be in ruins. Its shape remains as it was many centuries ago. The water reflects light, and this reflection highlights the smooth lines of the stone. The ancient part of the port is connected to the city by narrow passages. Small rooms where goods and tools were stored have been preserved along their sides. These spaces appear modest, revealing the practical side of city life. The stone surfaces in the passages are smooth but have natural pits created by time. Combined with the light, they create a soft surface that emphasizes the longevity of this place. One of the most striking elements of Byblos is the juxtaposition of different eras within a single space. Phoenician foundations, Roman columns, Byzantine walls, a Crusader fortress, all exist side by side, yet without conflict. The city appears cohesive. Each era has added its own forms without disrupting the harmony. This coexistence creates a sense of stability. Byblos appears not as an archaeological site, but as a living space, experienced on multiple levels. The city is surrounded by lines of green hills, creating a soft backdrop. The light falls evenly across them, and the cloud shadows move slowly. The sea, located to the west, forms a calm horizon. In the evening, the light warms, casting soft golden hues on the ruins. The stone walls, columns, and terraces make this palette especially striking. Today, Byblos preserves a structure that has survived many eras. Its ruins reveal not only its architecture but also its way of life. Streets, porticos, terraces, and ports connect the city's spaces into a unified system. Byblos remains an example of how ancient cities could maintain harmony despite change. It continues to be a place where architecture and landscape form a single whole, preserving an atmosphere that has endured for centuries. On the southern coast of Lebanon, where the sea curves in a smooth arc along cliffs and sandy strips, lies ancient Tyre, a city that for centuries remained one of the key points of the eastern Mediterranean. Its location determined its fate. Tyre was once an island protected by water, but over time, an isthmus created by sediments and construction connected it to the mainland. This duality, island and land, is preserved in the very feel of the city. Tyre does not hide its multi-layered nature. It displays Phoenician foundations, Roman streets, and Byzantine reconstructions. All this does not disrupt the harmony, but rather creates a space in which antiquity is felt in every stone. The approach to the archaeological site begins in the modern city. Its streets are calm, filled with light. From here, the sea is already visible, forming a soft horizon. Upon entering the Roman necropolis, the space changes dramatically. A long alley opens before your eyes, leading to a monumental arch. Stone sarcophagi line both sides of the road. Some are decorated with carvings, but most appear austere and simple. The light flows softly between them, highlighting the shape of each sarcophagus and creating a smooth rhythm that draws the eye forward. The monumental arch rises above the road, forming a unique entrance to the ancient city. Its proportions are calm, yet confident. The stone blocks from which it is composed are precisely laid. The arch served as a transition to the main street and was an important element of the urban fabric. The arch's interior creates shade, and after passing through it seems as if the city opens up anew. Beyond the arch begins a long Roman road leading to one of Tyre's most distinctive structures, its gigantic hippodrome. One of the largest Roman hippodromes, it is completely integrated into the landscape. It extends in a long, straight line, receding into the space. The bases of the stands rise in even steps, and the central axis, the back, is marked by the remains of stone structures. The hippodrome is perceived not as a separate structure, but as part of the city, integrated into its rhythm. Light falls smoothly across its surface, and even the ruined sections retain a sense of scale. The hippodrome connects to wide streets that extend further toward the area of the forums and temples. A powerful colonnade has been preserved in this part of Tyre. The bases of the columns form a rhythm that emphasizes the straightness of the street. The stone here has been smoothed by time, but the proportions remain precise. On the right side of the street lie the ruins of shops and workshops. Their premises are small, but their structure is clear. They convey the everyday life of a city where trade and crafts were an important part of existence. Below the street is part of the ancient port. The sea approaches the stone piers gently, filling small rectangular niches that served as mooring points for small vessels. This port was an important element of Phoenician maritime culture. Its stone structures are precisely laid out, and even today, the remains of the channels that allowed water to circulate through the port area are visible. Light reflects off the water's surface, creating a gentle shifting of light that highlights the shape of the stone foundations. Moving further, you can see the ruins of Roman baths. Their structure is so well preserved that it's easy to imagine the hot air circulation system. Small round hypocaust columns are visible in the floor. The bath halls are neatly paved with stone slabs. Light, filtering through the ruined sections of the walls, creates a soft, even illumination. The baths, like many other elements of the ancient city, were part of social networks. Their structure allows us to see how everyday life was organized. One of the most striking areas of Tyre is the section closest to the sea, where the remains of colonnades and terraces remain. Stone slabs laid in neat lines lead to a wide space that once served as a meeting center. To the left, a view of the sea opens up. Here, one can see how harmoniously Tyre is connected to the water. Light reflects off the sea's surface, and these reflections create shifting shadows on the stone. The architecture and the water appear as a single space. On the western side of the archaeological site are the remains of residential quarters. Despite the destruction, the layout of the houses remains legible: rooms, small courtyards, and corridors. Stone thresholds and foundations convey the structure of private life. These houses were not lavishly decorated, but their proportions and form demonstrate rational planning. These spaces convey the rhythm of everyday life, which complemented the monumentality of the temples and hippodrome. A special place in Tyre is occupied by the ancient island region, once separated from the mainland. Here, the foundations of buildings, paved roads, and remains of an ancient port have been preserved. In this area, it is especially noticeable that the city literally extended out into the sea. The stone lines follow the jagged contours of the coastline. Light filtering between fragments of walls highlights their structure. This island region of Tyre is a reminder of its most ancient function, a city of sailors, traders, and travelers. The city is surrounded by the gentle curves of hills, and this landscape makes the space especially striking. The evening light tints the stone in golden hues. The sea becomes calm, and the horizon evens out. Tyre appears as a city that retains its ancient presence without destroying the spaces of modernity. It connects different eras, each leaving its mark on the architecture. Today, Tyre remains one of the most atmospheric ancient cities in the Mediterranean. Its structure reflects multi-layered histories, and its space maintains a rhythm that has endured through the centuries. The city continues to exist as a place where architecture and the sea form a single composition. Tyre remains an example of sustainability and harmony, reflecting the connection between man, nature, and time. In northern Morocco, among hills covered with olive groves and short grass, lies Volubilis, one of the most complete Roman cities on the African coast. Its forms have been preserved so clearly that the space feels like a city temporarily devoid of inhabitants. There's no sense of oppressive ruins here. Instead, Volubilis appears calm, sunny, and open to the landscape. The light falls softly on the stone surfaces, and the horizon remains wide, making the city seem like a natural part of the valley rather than an architectural object set against nature. The approach to Volubilis passes through flat fields. As you approach, individual fragments of walls, columns, and arches begin to appear. The proportions of these elements are strict. The stone has been smoothed by time, but the shape retains its geometric form. These contours create the impression that the city continues to live with its own internal rhythm. Despite the lack of street barriers, the streets are easy to read. The direction of traffic, the outlines of houses, squares, and courtyards, everything remains in place. The main entrance leads to a spacious forum. The square is paved with stone slabs that have retained their flat surface. Column foundations run along its perimeter, defining the rectangular outline of the open space. The forum has a tranquil appearance. Light flows softly across the surface, reflecting warmly off the stone. This rhythm creates the sense that the forum has always been the center of city life, a place where roads crossed, meetings took place, and important issues were discussed. On one side of the forum stands a temple dedicated to the capital. Its platform is supported by massive walls. The terrace retains the bases of columns that once rose in vertical lines over the entire square. Although the columns are destroyed, the temple's structure remains clear. The space around it is level, open to the wind. The light softly highlights the edges of the stone, and this play of light makes the temple particularly expressive. It retains its significance as a sacred center, even in ruins. A street runs east from the temple, leading to the basilica. This is one of the most impressive buildings in Volubilis. The basilica was a long rectangular room with rows of columns on either side. Today, the columns stand in fragments, but their bases and lower parts have retained a uniform rhythm. The space inside the basilica remains open. Light filters through the ruined sections of the walls, creating a soft illumination. Despite the lack of a roof, the structure's base is so clearly visible that one can imagine the movement of people inside. Court hearings, meetings, business discussions. Next to the basilica stands the triumphal arch of Caracalla. It rises above the street with a confident form. Its proportions are calm, and the stone blocks from which it is composed are carefully laid. The arch creates a transition between parts of the city. Its vault casts shadow, and the light passing through it creates a contrast between open and closed space. It is one of those structures that conveys a sense of monumentality without being overly decorative. From the arch, the street leads into residential areas. Houses with courtyards and rooms have been preserved here. Some buildings have remains of mosaic floors. The Volubilis mosaics are considered among the most expressive in the region. Their forms are geometric, and the depictions of animals and scenes are precisely executed. Despite the loss of vibrant colors, the lines of the designs are clearly legible. These mosaics create the impression that private life was organized not only functionally, but also aesthetically. The streets of residential areas are paved with flagstones. They run in straight lines, intersect at right angles, and form small squares. In some places, curbs and remnants of drainage channels remain. These elements indicate a well-developed water supply system and urban engineering. Light flows evenly along the streets, emphasizing their structure. The buildings are arranged to create a dense yet orderly development. The scale of the spaces varies, with small rooms, large halls, and courtyards. All of this demonstrates the diversity of urban life. The baths are located on the northern side of the city. Their halls and corridors are organized according to a strict system, with each element connected to the water supply and heating. In some places, openings for the circulation of hot air and fragments of walls that supported the hypocaust remain. The warm halls, cold pools, and passages between them create a structure that remains clear even today. Light penetrates the baths through ruined openings, creating a space that is simultaneously open and intimate. Volubilis is surrounded by hills, creating a soft backdrop. The wind moves freely through the area, passing between the walls and columns. This wind becomes part of the city's structure, creating sounds that complement the silence. The evening light highlights the shapes of the buildings. The stone takes on a golden hue, and the contours become soft. At such moments, the city appears especially expressive. Near the residential areas are the remains of large farmhouses. Here, one can see utility rooms, press platforms, and water channels. These houses demonstrate Volubilis's connection to the surrounding countryside. The city was not isolated. It existed in close connection with the land that yielded its harvests. The space around the farmhouses is simple, but its structure is clear. The city walls of Volubilis remain fragmentary. Their lines follow the terrain, creating a sense of natural defense. Although not massive, the walls served to demarcate the city's boundaries. The passages in the walls open smoothly, and the light filtering through them once again connects the architecture with the landscape. Volubilis remains one of the most tranquil ancient cities. It is not overwhelmed by monumentality. Its strength lies in the clarity of its lines. Streets, squares, porticos, mosaics, and houses create a harmonious structure that has endured through the centuries. Light, wind, and gentle hills create a distinctive and cohesive space. It is a city that has preserved the balance between architecture and nature. It continues to exist as one of the warmest and most vibrant ancient spaces in the region. On the southern coast of Sicily, where the sea forms a smooth blue line and the wind flows freely across the open hills, lies Selinunte, one of the most extensive and striking ancient Greek complexes in the region. Its ruins occupy a vast area, and every part of this space is open to the sun and wind. Selinunte reveals itself gradually. It is not hidden in the folds of the terrain. Instead, it stands on a high terrace facing directly to the sea. Light falls evenly on the columns, walls, and stone blocks, highlighting their contours and creating a sense of calm, stable architecture that has survived centuries of destruction. The approach to the complex begins with a road winding through gently rolling hills. As you move toward the archaeological zone, the first stone fragments begin to appear. Individual columns, fragments of capitals, and large rectangular blocks. They rise from the ground as if following the natural contours of the terrain. As the silhouettes of the main structures become visible ahead, it becomes clear that this site occupied a special position in the region. The temples stood at different levels, creating a system of visual accents, each defining its own direction. On the eastern terrace stands Selinunte's most massive temple, a colossal Doric structure that was once visible from afar to all who approached the city from the sea. Its columns, despite their destruction, continue to rise from the ground in powerful vertical lines. The stone from which they are crafted has been smoothed by time, yet still retains its distinct form. Light moves across these surfaces throughout the day. In the morning, it highlights cool grayish tones, while in the evening, it turns the stone golden. These changes give the temple a vibrant appearance, seemingly shifting moods with the sunlight. A second temple stands slightly to the side, smaller in scale but more harmonious in proportions. It sits on a slight rise, and its surviving columns form a smooth geometric line. The space around it is open, and this contrast creates a unique sense of calm. Shadows flow between the columns, gently changing shape depending on the direction of the light. Even the ruined sections appear part of a unified composition. So clear were the proportions of this building. From these temples, the road leads to the third complex, one of Selinunte's most impressive structures. This temple was the largest in the city, but it was severely damaged by earthquakes. Today, it can be recognized by its gigantic columns which lie in neat rows on the ground. These columns, once vertical, now form enormous stone masses, and their horizontal lines create a sense of strength and scale. Light highlights the roughness of their surface, and the wind passes between the blocks, creating a soft sound. This place evokes a unique atmosphere. Destruction here has become a form of continuation of the architecture, which retains its proportions even in its fallen state. Continuing further, the path leads to the Acropolis of Selinunte. This elevated site stood at the edge of a terrace and served as the central part of the urban space. It offers views of the sea, the shores, and the surrounding hills. The Acropolis was surrounded by walls, some of which remain. These walls are constructed of rough stones, and their uneven surface conveys a sense of protection. Several smaller temples are located within the Acropolis. One of them is austere in form, with a base on which the smooth line of columns can still be seen. Light falls softly on these surfaces, emphasizing the neat proportions. The ruins of residential quarters stretch along the southern side of the Acropolis. These houses were simple, but their layout creates a clear sense of structure. Foundations mark rooms, corridors, and courtyards. The stone slabs that form the floors of some rooms remain level. Light filters through the walls, softening the space and allowing us to glimpse everyday life in the ancient city. The residential quarters are located next to temples, demonstrating that the sacred and the mundane coexisted in Selinunte. Next to the residential buildings are the ruins of public buildings, administrative offices, small forums, and porticos. Their foundations are built in strict lines. Even despite the destruction of the upper parts of the buildings, the lower elements have retained proportions that indicate careful and precise planning. Light flows across these smooth surfaces, creating a sense of stability. These buildings formed the social center of the city and were connected by direct roads to the temples and residential areas. One of Selinunte's key features was its openness to the sea. The distance from the temples and Acropolis to the shoreline is only a few hundred meters. The sea forms a calm, horizontal line, which, combined with the vertical elements of the temples, creates a unique architectural rhythm. Stone blocks, columns, walls, and debris form a variety of lines, but the sea remains a constant element of the backdrop. Selinunte appears to be a place where architecture and nature are not separated, but united into a single space. The eastern part of the archaeological zone includes defensive walls. Their uneven shapes and rough stonework suggest that the city was not only a religious center, but also a strategic point. The walls follow the contours of the terrain, their surfaces creating a play of light and shadow. The tower projections create a rhythm that emphasizes the defensive function. Here, the city's connection to the surrounding landscape is particularly noticeable. Within the complex, sections of ancient roads have been preserved. These roads are paved with level slabs. Some slabs have natural potholes, deepened by thousands of footsteps. Light highlights the road's contours, while shadows enhance the surface. These roads connected temples, houses, squares, and porticos, creating a unified pattern of movement. Selinunte is surrounded by hills gently rising from the shore. These hills form a tranquil horizon. Against this backdrop, Selinunte's architecture appears particularly resilient. Light flows freely throughout the complex, creating smooth transitions of shadow. The evening light warms the columns and softens the color of the stone. The wind passes between the ruins and becomes a part of the atmosphere, emphasizing the openness of the space and its connection to nature. Today, Selinunte stands as one of the most coherent and expressive ancient Greek complexes in the Western Mediterranean. Its territory is vast, yet each part creates a sense of a unified structure. Temples, acropolis, residential areas, roads, and walls form a harmonious space. Here, architecture and landscape coexist, preserving the stability of an ancient world that has endured for centuries. In central Iran, amidst the sweeping plains and gentle curves of the Zagros Mountains, lies a space that was once the first capital of the Achaemenid Empire. Pasargadae is unlike the typical ancient city with its dense buildings and high walls. There's almost no sense of a closed perimeter here. On the contrary, everything is constructed as if the architecture were deliberately spread out to let in as much air and light as possible. Against the open horizon, every platform, every column, and every staircase stands out with particular clarity. The approach to Pasargadae begins with a level road running through a tranquil valley. As one approaches the complex, the landscape changes only slightly. The same gentle elevation changes, the same lines of distant mountains. It is against this neutral backdrop that the main freestanding structure, the funerary monument traditionally associated with the name of the founder of the empire, stands out most clearly. It stands apart from the other buildings, on a low, raised foundation, and thus appears to be the center of an invisible axis around which the entire space unfolds. The monument's base is composed of large stone blocks laid in even horizontal rows. Each upper row is slightly smaller than the one below, so the entire structure rises in steps. This simple geometry creates a sense of stability. The stone has been smoothed by time, but the clear outline of the steps remains. At the top of the base is a small enclosed chamber with a gable roof. Its walls are devoid of decoration, which makes the structure particularly striking. At dawn, it appears cool and almost silvery. By sunset, it takes on a soft, golden hue. Against the open sky, the monument appears not heavy, but focused. A road leads from the tombstone toward the valley, leading to the core of the royal residence. Here, on a wide, level area, the contours of the raised stone platform on which the ceremonial chambers were located are still visible. The foundation slabs lie in even lines, forming a rectangle, clearly legible even after centuries of destruction. A prominent spot on this platform is where a large, columned hall once stood. The columns are gone, but their bases remain as round stone pedestals. They are arranged in precise rows, establishing a rhythm that makes it easy to imagine the former volume of the space. This hall was open to light and breeze. There were no blank walls between the columns, so the interior and exterior spaces flowed seamlessly into each other. This feeling is even more pronounced now. Light flows freely across the space, and the shadows of the surviving fragments shift smoothly throughout the day. The heaviness of the palace architecture typical of later capitals is absent here. The stateroom seems part of a plain, a carefully defined area within which movement is structured. Near the formal area were more intimate pavilions. One of them stood closer to the complex's conventional eastern side. Wide thresholds, wall fragments, and several stone foundations marking the former colonnade remain. The pavilion's layout was less formal than that of the formal hall, but it still reflects a desire for clarity. The rooms opened onto small courtyards, and the passages between them formed a gentle route connecting the formal part of the residence with the garden terraces. Gardens were a key element of Pasargadae. Their structure is revealed to us through stone channels that form a network of even lines on the ground surface. These channels extend in rectangular contours, dividing the area into separate sections. Even without water, it's clear that the system was meticulously planned. Water flowed from above, was distributed through the main channels, and gradually dispersed through the side channels, irrigating the trees and low-growing plantings. Today, the channels are empty, but their depth and clarity allow us to imagine the movement of water as part of the architecture. Light falls differently in these depressions than on flat slabs, and the interplay of light and shadow makes the garden grid appear like a pattern. A little further from the gardens stands another raised platform, which once housed a large reception room. The lines of the walls and a series of stone foundations have been preserved here, forming a rectangular interior space. This room was oriented to offer a wide view of the plain and surrounding mountains. Even now, standing at its level, it's easy to sense that the architects deliberately incorporated distant views into the composition. The plane of the floor, the edge of the platform, and the horizon line combine to form a single, calm geometry. Ancient roads run between the main buildings. They are paved with large slabs, which in some places have been preserved almost completely. The slabs lie flat, but some display cracks and natural potholes. These irregularities do not disrupt the overall order. Light highlights them, adding relief to the surface. People, processions, and carts once traveled along these roads. Today, only the wind moves along them, but the direction remains the same. The roads connect the tombstone, the ceremonial residence, the pavilions, and the gardens, transforming the individual buildings into a unified system. In the northern part of the complex, fragments of a tall rectangular tower remain. It stands alone, slightly off to the side of the main platforms. Its walls are composed of carefully hewn blocks. The upper portion has been destroyed, but its remaining height still leaves a powerful impression. The tower's vertical line contrasts with the horizontal lines of the plain and the low platforms. Light glides across its surface, highlighting the evenness of the stonework. The purpose of this structure is not entirely clear, but its position and shape suggest a special role in the overall composition. Other fragments of buildings are visible in the surrounding area. Remains of walls, foundations of small halls, traces of utility rooms. They are arranged not in a dense ring, but in separate groups. This leaves a lot of open space between them. One gets the impression that the city was scattered across the plain in large blocks, with air moving between them. This distinguishes Pasargade from later centers where architecture strove for density. The landscape remains an important part of the complex's perception. The surrounding plain appears almost level, but a closer look reveals gentle slopes on which platforms and pavilions stand. Mountains stretch on the horizon, their lines smooth and tranquil. The light changes throughout the day, and with it, the architectural backdrop. In the morning, the stone appears cooler. In the afternoon, neutral. And in the evening, warm. The wind blowing between the ruins creates a soft sound that accentuates the silence. Today, Pasargade doesn't impress with the height of its walls or the complexity of its decoration. Its strength lies elsewhere. Everything here is built on clear proportions, open space, and the interaction of architecture with the landscape. The tombstone on its own platform, the columned hall on a raised platform, the pavilions, the garden canals, the roads, and the tower form a unified composition. It doesn't impose its history, but allows it to be seen in its lines, planes, and distances. For archaeologists, this space remains a convenient, open-air laboratory. Each new excavation here does not cut through the dense urban fabric, but merely refines the existing pattern. Fragments of columns, fragments of reliefs, and traces of paint on the stone add detail but do not alter the overall impression. Even temporary flooring and protective structures are carefully integrated so as not to violate Pasargade's fundamental principle. Architecture should remain an extension of the plain, not an attempt to dominate it. Pasargade remains one of the most tranquil and luminous monuments of ancient Iran, demonstrating how power can be built not through heaviness, but through the clarity and openness of space. In the southern part of modern Turkey, where the Çukurova Plain stretches into vast horizons, lies ancient Tarsus, a city that served as a crossroads for centuries. Situated between the coast and the hinterland, this location has shaped its architectural structure. Many civilizations have left their mark here, yet the city does not appear chaotic. Its space is organized into a clear system of streets, squares, gates, and underground levels, preserving a sense of ancient order. The approach to the old part of Tarsus begins through modern neighborhoods where buildings stand in dense lines and only isolated fragments of antiquity hint at the depth of history. As the road descends closer to the center, the lines of ancient streets hidden underground become visible. The first large space that opens up to the visitor is the place known as the Cleopatra Gate. Today, only a portion of the structure remains, but even this allows one to imagine its scale. The stone blocks are laid evenly, and the shape of the gate creates a sense of transition between worlds, modern and ancient. Light falls softly on the stone surface, highlighting its texture. The passage beneath the arch creates a shadow, and this shadow becomes part of the structure. Not far from the gate is the so-called Roman Way, one of Tarsus's most striking features. This section of the ancient road is particularly well preserved. The slabs are laid in wide, even lines. Some slabs bear the marks left by ancient carts. Light streaming across the road's surface emphasizes its smoothness and flow. The road has a slight slope, creating a sense of movement. It recedes into space, creating a rhythm of slabs, seams, and shadows. This fragment offers a glimpse of Tarsus during the Roman era and demonstrates the city's connection to the trade routes that pass through it. The space then opens to the ruins of an ancient market. Despite the destruction of the upper parts of the building, the foundations retain their rectangular shape. This market was part of the city's trading system. Stone walls mark the perimeter of the rooms, and the remains of niches and passages can be seen inside. Light filters through the ruined areas, creating a soft glow. The market was not huge, but its proportions demonstrate the importance of trade in the daily life of Tarsus. One of the city's most striking buildings is the ancient underground water tunnel. Situated below street level, it consists of a long corridor carved into stone. The tunnel's walls are smooth, and the ceiling is arched. Despite the absence of water, the structure retains a sense of movement. Light penetrates through small openings, creating soft shadows. These shadows follow the lines of the walls, making the space feel like part of a living system. The tunnel demonstrates the sophisticated engineering that existed in the city. It served to distribute water between different neighborhoods. The central part of the archaeological site contains the ruins of ancient baths. These baths have retained their general structure: rooms for hot and cold water, small pools, and relaxation rooms. The floors of some rooms are paved with tiles, and air circulation channels are visible in the walls. Light filters through the ruined openings, creating a soft glow. Despite the partially destroyed walls, a sense of order is preserved. The baths played an important role in social life, and their architecture emphasizes a desire for harmony. Nearby is a building known as the House of St. Paul. Today, it is in ruins, but the structure of the house is easily traced: an inner courtyard, small rooms, and corridors. The courtyard is paved with stone slabs, and the light reflects softly off them. The walls, although destroyed, retain their shape. This space does not appear ceremonial. On the contrary, it conveys an atmosphere of private life. The house is located close to the street, and its layout reveals how life was organized in the ancient city. One of the most characteristic features of Tarsus is the ancient well of St. Paul. This well is particularly well preserved. Its round shape is emphasized by smooth stone blocks laid in precise lines. The well's interior is smooth, and the light falling within creates a distinctive effect of depth. This structure served as a source of water, and simultaneously as one of the city's symbolic elements. Despite its simplicity, the well is an important fragment of the city's history. To the north are the remains of ancient fortress walls. These walls are partially destroyed, but their proportions retain a sense of defense. The stone blocks are laid in strict vertical lines. Light falls evenly on them, emphasizing their form. The walls follow the contours of the terrain, creating a sense of unity between architecture and nature. Fragments of tower projections demonstrate the strategic role of the fortifications. They served to protect the city and allowed control of the routes leading to it. Residential quarters have been preserved within the urban area. Their foundations provide a clear idea of the structure of the houses: small rooms, courtyards, and corridors. Stone thresholds indicate entry points. Light flows evenly between the walls, creating a calming atmosphere. These houses reveal the everyday life that existed alongside more monumental structures. They were built from simple materials, but their layout is rational. One of the largest landmarks in Tarsus is the ancient bridge. This bridge has been particularly well preserved despite modifications made in later periods. Its arched spans are constructed of large stone blocks. The bridge crosses the river, and the water reflects light, creating a play of reflections on the lower part of the structure. This bridge served as an important transportation artery, connecting different parts of the city. Its form appears stable and harmonious. The spans create a rhythm that emphasizes the engineering precision. The ruins of small sanctuaries also survive in Tarsus. These sanctuaries had strict forms: rectangular rooms, small porticos, and stone altars. Despite the destruction of their upper parts, the proportions remain. Light filters through the open spaces, creating an even illumination. The sanctuaries were not massive, but they played an important role in the life of the city. Their arrangement demonstrated the connection between the urban and spiritual structures. The city is surrounded by the gentle contours of the plain. Light moves freely across the Earth's surface. The evening light makes the ruins especially striking. The stone surfaces take on golden hues. The wind blowing between the fragments of buildings creates a soft sound that becomes part of the atmosphere. It is this silence that makes Tarsus special. It preserves not only the architectural elements, but also the sense of time. Today, Tarsus remains an ancient city, where the street structure, temple ruins, underground corridors, bridges, and residential areas form a coherent space. Light, stone, and air give it life. Tarsus conveys clarity of architectural thought and sustainability. The city continues to exist as a place where ancient forms are preserved within the modern world, creating a unique sense of depth and silence that has endured through the centuries. In southern Syria, amidst flat plateaus and gently curved basalt hills, lies the Bosra Amphitheater, one of the most complete and monumental structures of Roman architecture in the East. Its form, concealed within the depths of the ancient citadel, immediately creates a sense of stability. The stone used here is unusual, not the light limestone typical of the Mediterranean, but dark basalt, which imparts a strict rhythm to the space. This gives the amphitheater not only a monumental appearance, but also a coherent one. Light falls evenly across its surfaces, highlighting the clear lines and deep shadows. The approach to the complex begins with the outer walls surrounding the amphitheater. These walls date back to a later period, forming part of a fortress built around the Roman structure. Tall towers, massive openings, and clean vertical lines create a spacious feel. Light filters across the wall surface, highlighting the dark tones of the basalt. The interior leads through a narrow passageway that opens into a space where the first outline of the amphitheater can be seen. It is this transition, from a narrow, almost intimate corridor to a wide hall, that creates a sense of expansiveness. Stepping inside, you find yourself before a huge semicircle of steps. The amphitheater has several levels, each rising above the previous one in a gentle curve. The basalt slabs of the steps are well preserved, and their surface is smooth. Light passing along them creates long horizontal lines, making the space clear. The rows rise evenly, and the transitions between levels are marked by wide aisles. These aisles form the structure by which spectators ascended to their seats. Despite the destruction of individual sections, the overall rhythm has been preserved. The central part of the amphitheater, the orchestra, is semicircular. It is paved with stone slabs laid flat, reflecting light softly off the surfaces. The orchestra served as a performance space, and its position emphasizes the importance of the stage. The stage is located above the orchestra. Its rectangular shape and the rear section is supported by a high wall. This wall is one of the most impressive parts of the amphitheater. It consists of several tiers of niches, columns, and arches. Despite the lack of decorative trim, the structure appears complex thanks to the rhythm of vertical and horizontal lines. The rear wall of the stage is constructed of basalt. The stone blocks are precisely laid and the light highlights their edges. This wall doesn't appear heavy. On the contrary, it creates a sense of order. The arched elements and niches are arranged symmetrically. Their proportions demonstrate the meticulous attention to detail in the acoustics. The acoustic properties of the Bosra amphitheater are considered among the best in the Roman world. Even a quiet voice reflects off the wall's surface and spreads throughout all levels. Behind the stage is a system of corridors that served as a hub for actors and technical staff. These corridors are narrow, but their walls are smooth. Light filters in through small openings, creating soft shadows that highlight the form. The corridors form a network connecting different parts of the stage, allowing the theater to function as a unified space. Beneath the amphitheater are underground levels. Their walls are made of basalt blocks. It feels cool here. Light streaming through the openings reflects off the stone, creating an even illumination. These levels were used for equipment storage. Despite the lack of large decorative elements, the space appears well designed. Its forms emphasize its practical nature. Returning to the main space of the amphitheater, you can see the passages leading to the upper levels. These passages have arched ceilings. Their shape creates stability. Light streaming through the arches creates a unified space. These elements connect the lower and upper parts of the structure. As you ascend the stairs, you feel the space opening up ever wider. From the height of the last rows, the entire amphitheater appears as a single structure, where every line is subordinated to the overall shape of a semicircle. The upper part of the amphitheater offers views of the surrounding area of Bosra. Here, the smooth lines of the plain, gentle hills, and isolated fragments of the ancient city are visible. Light flows evenly along these lines, creating a sense of connection between the architecture and the landscape. The theater is positioned so that every part of it is oriented toward these views, emphasizing that the architects considered not only the internal structure, but also the external perspectives. On the exterior of the amphitheater, walls dating back to a later period remain. They were part of the citadel built around the theater during the Arab dynasties. These walls are constructed of the same basalt stone as the Roman structures. This creates a sense that the different eras do not clash, forming a single architectural layer. In some places, the walls have turret-like projections. Light falling on them creates an uneven surface. These projections emphasize the defensive nature of the citadel. The amphitheater's inner perimeter is surrounded by passageways. They are wide, and their vaults are supported by massive pillars. Light filters through the openings, creating soft shadows. These passageways served to distribute the audience into sections. The proportions of the corridors demonstrate the meticulous engineering of the structure. Even today, these levels appear stable. The stone retains heat and cold, and the space responds to changing light. In some parts of the amphitheater, elements related to decorative finishing have been preserved. These include fragments of cornices, small columns, and parts of arches. These elements are simple in form, but their lines emphasize harmony. Despite the destruction, even small fragments retain their expressiveness. Light passing over the surfaces softens the stone, making even the damaged areas appear part of a unified ensemble. The combination of dark stone and wide spaces creates a unique atmosphere. Unlike many ancient theaters where light limestone dominates, here every surface absorbs some of the light. This creates an intimate space, yet the scale is enormous. It is this contrast, the intimacy of the material and the grandeur of the form, that creates a sense of Bosra's uniqueness. The theater does not overwhelm, but surrounds the visitor with soft lines. Today, the Bosra amphitheater remains one of the best preserved Roman theaters in the world. Its structure has survived many eras. Walls, vaults, steps, stage, corridors, and underground levels all form a coherent space where architecture, light, and stone merge into a single rhythm. Bosra conveys the precision of Roman engineering, the stability of Oriental stone, and the strength of a structure that has endured for centuries.